Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, our invocation this morning is to be grateful for seeing everyone here. We're back from the summer. Thank you for all of your good wishes, and let's have a great week. Amen.
Amen.
Could I have a vote from the LPA, please, to accept Don Sudduth appearing from the Redwood Forest of wherever he is?
Is that a motion?
We need a motion to accept Don.
I'll motion to accept Don on the Zoom.
Second.
There's a motion by Jane and a second by Jim. Is there any objection to that motion? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Welcome, Don. And where are you this morning, Don?
Thank you. Good morning. I'm in Arizona.
Okay, that's where
You look good, Arizona.
The next item on the agenda, we don't have it here, but we're going to ask for an approval of the agenda, especially since we have 4 items that have requested a continuance, and I have a motion to approve the agenda.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
may I just point out that we would then be starting on item E, which is a legislative policy type discussion, and the remaining items are all quasi-judicial. Do you want to move E to the end, or would you prefer?
Let's move, that would be a great idea. Does anybody object to
Wait,
moving?
she can't.
The legislative item needs to be before one of the variance requests.
Okay. I apologize.
I'll move.
Just a thought.
Okay, I'll move to accept the agenda with the removal of the floor agenda
Do
item.
don't they have to get up and ask officially, or is it already official?
So that topic always comes up, so let me clarify. Basically, there has been no advertising yet for these items. There's been not advertising in the newspaper to where we would have to have the public hearing and continue it to a date certain.
Okay.
So for that reason, it's being rescheduled rather than continued.
It's being rescheduled. Okay, so.
I second Jane's motion.
Thank you, Jim. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. First item on the agenda is an approval of the minutes for June 11th, 2024.
So moved.
Thank you, Jim.
Second.
And there's, so motion by Jim and second by John. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Next item is public comment. Does anybody have any public comment they wish to make? None? Okay, we'll close the public comment. So items A, B, C, and D, which all pertain to the Outrigger Resort, London Bay properties, are being rescheduled to a date uncertain. So our next item on the agenda is ordinance 2424. This has to do with building intensity measurement for detached single two-family residences. I'll read the title. Ordinance 2424 is an ordinance of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, amending 1, Table 34-3, titled Dimensional Regulations in Conventional Zoning Districts, in Chapter 34, Article 3. Division 4, to create Note 10, to provide that detached single-family and two-family homes without a commercial use in any conventional zoning district where that use is allowed may be evaluated by building coverage rather than FAR. 2, Section 34-675C in Chapter 34, Article 3, Division 5, to provide that building intensity of commercial and mixed-use buildings shall be evaluated using floor area ratio, FAR, and detached single-family and two-family residence intensity shall be evaluated using building coverage not to exceed 40% in the downtown zoning district. 3, Section 34-683 in Chapter 34, Article 3, oh Lord, this is long. Division 5, related to the creation of neighborhood centers in the Santini zoning district, to provide that detached single-family and two-family residence building coverage shall not exceed 40%. 4, Section 34-693 in the Village Zoning District regulations to provide that commercial and mixed-use building intensity shall be evaluated using floor area ratio, and detached single-family and two-family residence intensity shall be evaluated using building coverage and shall not exceed 40%. 5. Section 34-705 in the CB zoning district to provide that for commercial and mixed-use developments, floor area ratios shall not exceed 1.0, and building coverage for detached single-family and two-family residences, building coverage shall not exceed 40%, providing for severability, codification, scrivener's errors, conflicts of law, and providing for an effective date. I know.
Yep.
Thank you. I was a good reader in school. All right, so we will ask Sarah to begin this.
Good morning, Sarah Probst with Community
Good morning,
Development.
Sarah.
What you have before you, ordinance 2424, is a change to the code that was discussed with town council, excuse me, previously, where currently in the non-residential zoning districts, the predominantly non-residential zoning districts, FAR was the applicable way to measure buildings. Whereas in the residential zones, 40% coverage was the typical standard. As people are rebuilding, they're finding that a lot of times it's difficult to meet the floor area ratio with a home because you can't have anything essentially on that first floor. So most homes are going to be over the floor area ratio that's allowed in that zoning district for a commercial use. So there was a request to change so that all single-family residential and two-family residential were allowed to meet the 40% building coverage rather than the floor area ratio, no matter what zoning district it was. So that is what you see before you today. It has to cover multiple sections in order to meet that criteria in each of the commercial zoning districts.
Okay.
I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Sarah. Jim, questions?
Sarah, the 40% number, is that an industry standard, something that typically works well for an island like ours? Do we have a bunch of exceptions coming if we go to that versus the FAR? Do you have an opinion on that?
It's the standard that's been in place for, I think since the island started its own code. It has worked in most instances. We do have some instances where people request for a higher percentage. You'll have one before you today, a variance where they're gonna be requesting that higher percentage. But it is not covered by the comprehensive plan. So that's one thing, we do have a lot of flexibility within the land development code. So if you were to find that many houses were coming and requesting more than 40% coverage and you thought that it was appropriate, it could be changed within the land development
Very
code.
good, thank you.
Doug, you have questions?
Yeah, I just want to be clear, absolutely clear, I understand. So when you say 40% coverage, that means in residential, the building can cover 40% of the lot area?
That's correct.
Okay, I just want to
They
make
still
sure
won't
that-
be able to exceed the 67% building coverage for residential though. So, or impervious surface. So they're allowed to cover 40% of the lot with a building, and then they have 67% impervious limit.
How does
So-
that work when that doesn't add up to 100?
You wanna ask that question?
I'm sorry, how does that work when that doesn't add up to 100?
That other percentage that remains above the 67% is your open space. That's where your stormwater goes.
Open space.
Yeah. So that's to ensure that people don't just cover their lot with concrete and then all their stormwater runs onto their neighbors.
Is that clear, Doug?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Jane, any other question? Don, how about you? Do you have a question?
Yeah, I just, again, same question Doug had kind of, with respect to 67. I'm just trying to figure out, so it's covering it kind of from the aerial perspective, right? I mean, so in other words, if it's an elevated home with no concrete under it, it's still considered coverage, correct?
Yes, so that would be the building coverage, sort of that outer limits of the wall is considered the building
Okay.
coverage.
Okay.
Anything else, Don?
No, thank you.
Jim?
This will just make it so that it's consistent through any of the residential zoning district, whether it's single family or two family.
And throughout the primarily commercial districts too. So any place, because on the island, there are no districts that don't allow residential uses. So any place someone wants to build a residential structure, they would still have that 40% coverage allowed.
Anything else, Ben?
No.
John?
I'm good, thank you.
Can you follow up real quick?
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm thinking about somebody arguing for the exceptions to that, and what criteria you would find compelling to say that that's inappropriate. Would one of those be if they did the proper setbacks on the lot and it went to 48, but met all other setback requirements? Would you consider that to be a legitimate request then against the 40% limit?
Not necessarily. I mean, because the 40% still sort of serves the purpose for massing. They could request a variance, and then it could be evaluated by the variance criteria, so it would really depend on the other components probably.
All right.
I don't have any questions. I just had a hard time visualizing this.
Yeah.
I really had a hard time visualizing it, but, okay. Any other questions at all for Sarah?
I just want to
I
request a
don't-
clarification. So basically what we're saying is residential will be evaluated by the 40% coverage no matter what zoning district they're in.
Exactly.
That's what it is.
Well, and to be clear, it's not the multifamily residential, it's just gonna be
Single family.
single family, and two family.
Single family and like duplex.
Yes.
Okay.
I had one more comment.
Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, just, it concerns me that we have these, we have a setback rule, and if someone meets the setback rule, but they don't meet the 40% rule, they have to ask for a variance. So it seems conflicting to me, and again, it just seems like a roadblock to rebuilding or recovery, so,
Yeah, I think that's
Just,
what Jim was saying.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
yeah, that's.
So I think that the instances where that would apply, where that may be, an issue would be on very large lots. So on the typical lot in the town, if you have, if you meet all your setbacks, cause most of the houses are building to the setbacks and they're not exceeding the 40%. So if you had a very large lot, that would be an instance where you may exceed that because you have a lot more internal space. You're still gonna have the 25-foot front setback, 20 or 25-foot rear setback, and then the maximum of 10 foot. But if you had a 300-foot wide lot, you're gonna have a lot of space inside those 10-foot setbacks.
So we have very few 300-foot wide lots, but we do have 100-plus foot wide lots. Would it apply, have we looked at that? Would it apply to a 100-foot wide lot?
We haven't done any evaluation of those specifically.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be my concern. I think if you meet your setbacks, it seems odd that that you have to come in and get a variance,
I agree.
All right.
no matter the lot size.
If you don't wanna have a building coverage requirement, that is also an option.
No.
Is there a way to put a thing that says, well, no, because then we don't have a limit on the massing?
I mean, really think about it like the floor area ratio. I mean, it's commensurate to that. It's just a different way to measure it to allow houses to be, as many stories as they're allowed to be. Whereas, in the commercial, the floor area ratio counts each individual floor. The building coverage just counts
The block.
the block.
Yeah, but I think,
But it's very similar to
It's less
FAR.
restrictive than the
It's, yes,
FAR.
it's less
It is,
restrictive,
yeah.
that is correct.
less restrictive and consistent across
Yeah.
the rest of the zones. So
Yes.
to me, it's just creating consistency across the island.
How did this generate? How did this come about?
Requests and then
Requests
council,
from
requests
property
from
owners.
property owners, and, then bringing it up to council, asking if they felt that this was an issue, because it actually began, I think maybe with the beach bar, because they wanted to be counted by, I think they wanted to be counted by building coverage originally, and we were like, no, you're a mixed use, that is not an option, you're something different. But we brought it to council to say, do you agree? How do you want this covered? What do you think is appropriate? And they basically said that they would like houses to be single family and two family to be measured the same way across the island. And that would be the 40% coverage application.
So what happened with the beach bar?
The beach bar is requesting a CPD,
So
to
they-
exceed their floor area ratio.
Okay.
and it's mixed use.
Yeah, and it's mixed use.
So is there a process, Sarah, since this is opening it up, council saying, let's find a better way to deal with some of these appropriate requests that are banging up against FAR? Is there a way that you can build an administrative approval that says if there are no other variances being asked for and all setbacks are being met, that this type of request to exceed 40% could be administratively handled versus procedurally handled through the entire process?
I guess my question would be then why have it?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
what is the intent of having this if our only concern is the setbacks and the height?
Yep.
You know, if those are the boxes, if those are your parameters, do you need the other thing? I think the intent was for it to cover, I mean, I think that the intent when this was created was probably for those larger lots.
Yes,
And
and
to
for
ensure that,
massing.
yeah,
The massing issue, which is, you know, we always talk about, with all due respect, Bonita Beach Road. I mean, as you go through there, it's like, it's a canyon.
yes.
And that, this was intended to.
Yeah, it's sort of a
hopefully curtail-
backstop.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes, it's a backstop.
So, I mean, it would be possible to do that, I just would question whether it's something that is actually needed if we're gonna be handling it administratively.
Yeah.
You know, and what would our criteria be for approving it?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions for Sarah? Okay, let's open the public hearing. Would anybody care? Albert? As a Florida State fan, I am gonna ask.
Oh.
Go Gators.
I still love you, Nita, though. Yeah.
Good, good.
Not to the
good.
end of November, though. Albert Danvers, for the record, architect, studio AD. I walked in a little late, sorry about that, but I did catch the last few minutes of conversation. The reason this came about was Patrick and I came at the M&P meeting back in June, I believe, or maybe May, and we brought this up, and it did start with the beach bar as we started analyzing it. And we knew we were going to be going to a CPD, and you guys already went through that process with that to ask for that. But unfolding this with other clients who have Gulf front lots, we realized that in RM in downtown, you have to use FAR for even a single family house. And again, the FAR means if you take that ratio of 1.0 in like I Street, and you only can count that lot area that you can build on, not the land that goes all the way out to the Gulf. And you take that 1.0 floor area ratio, that counts for all of the floors. So that means someone's trying to sell a house or property on a multi-million-dollar piece of property, you only can build a 2-story house, meaning ground and then one more above. Using a lot coverage made sense on single-family homes only, as we do in RS zoning and RC zoning all right now. You know, like hibiscus houses, high Hercules houses, any of your houses that people live on right now already have lot coverage of 40%. We've been adhering to that. I was a little concerned when everyone was saying, why do we even have that? I'll let you know every jurisdiction has lot coverage. Now, our house in city of Fort Myers off McGregor, we have 35% lot coverages. Depending on the lots in City Naples has like, I don't know, 16 different residential zoning districts.
Oh, my.
And all of them have different lot coverage ratios you have to adhere to. So I don't think that's the direction we wanted to go.
Yeah.
So right now, status quo, RSRC, we gotta do 40% lot coverage. You have the 67% impervious, which is totally fine. This, again, came about with the Gulf front lots, and more specifically, the Gulf front lots that don't land on Estero and go all the way through to the Gulf. It's the lots that are behind the house on Estero to go there. When you do floor area ratio, I ran into a client who purchased a property on the south end and was given bad due diligence information from whoever they consulted with at first. And they thought they can build one, first of all, was past the 78, 74, whatever it is, the other line. And like, no, that's the blade that comes down. The other thing they realized was this is floor area ratio. And so Patrick and I are going through a variance with that, but we may not need to if this is in the process of changing, so that's fine. That restricted their house to only a 2-story house. And it's not fair if you go one lot over and they're an RC, you can do 40% lot coverage. But to take this up a little further, am I over?
Does anybody mind if Albert continues for a minute?
No.
I'm learning a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. To take this a little further, I know you said it's hard to visualize. Maybe good,
But I
again,
just
like I said.
visualized it.
Okay, I think it might also good to kind of give you some scenarios graphically if you want to pursue this a little further, because it makes a difference on these lots. The 40% lot coverage is great if you're on land, on the land side of Estero. But when you get to the Gulf side, that 40% lot coverage in
all the way
section
down.
34-634, you still can't count lot coverage past that EC line. But it's consistent with your Florida ratio, which you can't count that line. So, for residential purposes, there have been houses previously, currently, in 23 after the hurricane, that are been used in 40% lot coverage in RS and RC zoning, that have been able to count the lot area beyond that 78 line and use 40% of that. It's very inconsistency what I'm seeing a lot of when I do searches for single family homes and see what they're going through. And this was part of the research we started realizing and say, how is this inconsistency happening? So that 40% on some of these small cottage lots is also restricted. So I guess the thing is, if you leave the LDC alone by definition, is this lot coverage that someone brought up here available to come out as a variance and say, look, 40% hurts us, can we do 42% lot coverage? And if that's a possibility, then that takes care of it, because then you could deal with it for just the small sections, the small properties that have to come up for variances. And I have no problem with that, because some of these small lots, we have to come with variances anyway to reduce setbacks or show you what setbacks were there before. It's just be another thing we'd ask for. I just didn't know that lot coverage would be something that we could ask for through a variance.
We're gonna find that out. Okay, Albert, thank you so much.
That's all I got.
I
If you have any other
appreciate
questions, let me
that
know.
very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who has public comment? Come on up. How are you today? Nervous. Why are you nervous? Oh, for heaven's sakes, it's just us. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm Penny Porter,
Hi,
and
Penny.
I'm the owner of 51 Pearl Street. Now, I know the variance hasn't come yet, so I'm not gonna talk about that. I know
Okay.
I'm on the agenda. I'm gonna talk specifically about this, this change in,
In the,
Lot
in the
coverage.
lot coverage.
lot coverage. I'm one of those, just for an example, I just want to piggyback on what the previous gentleman was talking about, in that I have a very large lot, but the buildable area is very small. And that presents a real issue when you're talking about lot coverage. And if you could use lot coverage and consider the whole lot, like for example, my lot is, the impervious coverage in my application is under 20%. But because in the impervious coverage, they use the whole lot. But when it comes to lot coverage, they're only allowing us to use the buildable area, which is behind the CCL. So that then becomes a real issue, because now you've got a very small area, you're calculating a lot coverage that just doesn't work. So, you know, if you're considering changing the rules, I might suggest that you allow the whole lot to be considered as a rate for the ratio of lot coverage, and not just the small buildable area. But that's all.
Thank you, Penny.
Thank
Now,
you.
that wasn't so bad, was it?
No.
Good. Hope to see you again.
She's next on the agenda.
Anyone else like to speak? Okay, we'll close the public comment. All right, Sarah, so let's start with, let's answer the question, is a variance available to someone who does not meet the lot coverage or wishes to exceed the lot coverage?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a yes. What about, including the 40% calculation beyond the EC?
I did offer when we spoke about this at M&P, I did offer that as a suggestion to the town council. They did not feel that that was a good idea. They didn't think that we should. My suggestion was that you can utilize a percentage of it, because the way you can use the EC zoning district for density is one dwelling unit per 20 acres. So that's a tiny percentage of it. So there would be an option to use a small percentage of that larger EC area to allow additional building coverage. They did not think that that was an appropriate direction to go. especially considering that property owners did have the opportunity to come in and request a variance. And I do want to correct that the impervious
Impervious.
surface does not count the EC. It is the buildable area. It has to be the area where they can build whatever allowed use that is.
Okay, okay. And then the whole lot calculation, just to address Penny's question,
The whole lot calculation would be problematic because.
very problematic for beachfront lots.
Yeah, because you would be able to pretty much
Right.
cover your entire parcel, which means you wouldn't be meeting any of your setbacks. I mean, in the instance, Penny's gonna be coming before you, she's asking for a reduction in the setbacks, and she's asking for an increase in floor area, building coverage. So you would also be getting variances for those setbacks. So I don't think that it is necessarily an appropriate request, or an appropriate way to utilize the EC.
So what do you all think about a percentage of the EC as it is in other parts of the code being utilized, even if it's a small percentage? What are your thoughts on that? Don? Nothing. Can you hear me, Don?
All right. Yeah, I
That's
heard you.
okay.
Sorry, I was on mute.
That's all right.
Yeah, I think I can live with that.
How about you, Jim?
Yes?
Doug?
I think I'd rather ask for a variance if you need it, you know, like keep it like it is, or the thought we have, but then, yeah, I could see, you know, I need 42% or something of the buildable, but I'd rather do that.
Jane?
I think the fact that you're allowed to have a variance on it, that gives the avenue to get to that, so that's not just a given.
How about you?
I would concur. I think we need the percentage, and there's a relief there. They can always apply for a variance.
John, do you agree?
I agree completely, and I'm all for consistency across all of the buildable lots.
Okay, so we'll just make that, we'll include that as a recommendation to the council, that they revisit that concept. Okay. All right. So now, could we have a motion to forward our,
To recommend approval and a finding of consistency with your comp plan.
yes, and to consider
Yes.
the additional use of a percentage of that EC? Would somebody like to make that motion?
I would move that, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Second.
So there's a motion and a second to find this consistent with the comprehensive plan, to move this forward with a recommendation to the council, and to have them reconsider a percentage use consistent with other elements of the code of the environmentally critical areas. This isn't a roll call, this is just legislative, this is just a free-for-all, right? Is there any discussion on the motion? I'd like to thank the folks, Albert and Penny, I'd like to thank you very much for your comments. It helped clarify things for me, so thank you very much. And any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So we go on. Thank you very much. The motion carries unanimously. The next item is Penny's, VAR 20240-100. This is 51 Pearl Street. Before I begin, may I ask for ex parte communication? Don, do you have any?
No ex parte.
Okay. Jim?
None.
Doug?
No, ma'am.
Jane?
Yes, I did a site visit and spoke with the owner. I also would like to comment that there was no advertisement sign on the property, and I don't think there was on the other one either.
Okay, I'll let Nancy comment on that as soon as we go through the rest. Jim, any ex parte?
None.
John?
I'm familiar with the property. It's across from where I live now, and we received various letters as well.
Okay. I'll just state for the record that I looked at it on Google Earth because I couldn't orient everything carefully, so I did a Google Earth search, but that's all I have. Nancy, could you address Jane's issue with the posting of notice?
I'm gonna defer to staff as far as the requirements and if it was posted and perhaps removed or what the situation is. I'm not aware of that.
would like to address that?
Jason Smalley with your Planning and Zoning Department. So I apologize, I wasn't aware that the sign was not put up on that site. If you would let me know just which ones you didn't see them on this time, I'll absolutely personally assure that they get put up for the town council one. And
I think 51 and Lagoon.
51 and Lagoon.
Yeah, I think it's really important because if we now have the power to, if everybody agrees and it doesn't have to go to council, that it really needs to be advertised
Yeah.
for the neighborhood and for those that are driving by to be able to see it.
Right, obviously we do send out the postcards. for
Sure, I
500.
know, but I mean.
take your point,
You
though.
know, a lot of people, it goes to their north address or whatever, and if they're down here or you just don't see it, they just doesn't attract attention.
I will take responsibility
No
for that, and
problem.
I will ensure that going forward, we have them up, and for the town council meeting, I'll personally assure they get put on those.
Well, and the other thing was, I'm looking at the property and there's no address on the building that's there.
Gotcha.
And I'm trying to figure out, is this building already built? Is this, what is this? And then fortunately, the owner was out in the lot and I was able to speak to her, but, I didn't know, there was no address, so, and there's no street, so.
Of course,
It makes it
absolutely,
more
absolutely
interesting.
relevant.
Yeah.
I will, again, I apologize for that, and I will personally ensure it gets done.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Jason.
Follow-up question for a second?
Yes, go ahead.
Directed to the attorney while you're still here. So are there any
You're not an attorney.
procedural violations we have because it wasn't posted?
That's what I was gonna inquire. Oftentimes, the posting on the property is, as a courtesy, the requirement is generally,
The mailing.
the mailing. When you get to the town council level, then there are advertising requirements in the newspaper for rezonings, and comp plan amendments, but
So
not
we're okay to
necess-
deal with it today as advertised?
I believe so. I just wanted staff, your common practice that it's just as a courtesy, to post it.
Yes, absolutely, that is true, but we do take LPA members' opinion on this, and we will make sure that that is posted in the future.
Thank you
The-
so much.
And the rationale for that is that the mailing ensures that those within the radius of the property receive it, hopefully. But with the signage, sometimes in inclement weather, it can be removed or mischief, occurring on the street. So- Mischief, yes, mischief. Madam Chair, if I
Yes.
may, could we go back? I'd like to make a few comments
We
about
haven't finished the,
Yes, we have.
oh, we did?
about your agenda. The remaining items, you have 3 of them, and these are all quasi judicial in nature. And I just want to say a few words about quasi judicial proceedings. And these type of proceedings require our public hearings to comply with procedural requirements that have been established in Florida law and in our land development code. So these quasi judicial proceedings, they're less formal than proceedings before a circuit court, but they're more formal than the remainder of our meeting and the basic standards of due process requiring that notice be afforded to the property owner, that we apply the correct standards and sections of our code, and that your decisions in these matters are made on competent and substantial evidence that can be presented to you either verbally or in written form. Once you receive the testimony, you're going to evaluate it for each of these 3 items, and then you're going to draw a conclusion regarding whether the criteria that is in the Land Development Code or in state law has been satisfied. Your decision should not be based on pure speculation or opinion, because the courts have considered those type of statements to not be competent and substantial evidence. Testimony by individuals who are qualified to be experts in a particular area of law or expertise have been recognized by Florida courts as providing competent and substantial evidence. Also, testimony by neighbors and residents who have fact-based information such as minutes, surveys, engineering reports, or testimony that is based on their personal information, their knowledge, things that they have visually observed, has been viewed as competent and substantial evidence by the courts. So those of you in the audience, if you intend to speak, please keep these matters in mind as well. And when you come forward, we would be asking that you state your name clearly for the record and whether or not you have been sworn in. I also want to add that you have a couple variance items on your agenda today, and a unanimous decision by eligible voting members of the LPA to approve those variances constitutes final agency action, subject to a request by anyone for an additional hearing or review of the matter by the town council if that request for the additional hearing is received by the town clerk within 10 days. So for purposes of efficiency, and because this is quasi-judicial in nature, we'd like to go ahead and dispose of a few matters. The first item applicable to all three hearings, as you've already discussed regarding the first item, is whether they have been properly noticed for today's hearing. So I defer to staff and the clerk.
Yes, they have been noticed.
Okay, and also the next housekeeping item we have is to ask if any of you have a conflict of interest that would prohibit you from voting on any of these three items. If you do, please disclose it at this time, the nature of the conflict, so we know that we have a quorum available to make the decision.
Does anyone have a conflict? No one, Nancy?
Okay. So again, because these proceedings are a little bit more formal than our typical meetings, we do ask that anyone wishing to give testimony today or presenting testimony, that they be sworn in at this time. So anyone that would like to do that, please stand. Members of the audience, raise your right hand and the clerk will administer an oath.
Do you solemnly swear and affirm that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? All right, all parties have been sworn.
Okay, Madam Chair, I think at this point we're ready for our first quasi-judicial item. I'll go ahead and read the title if you like.
Sure.
Okay, this is variance 2024-0100, 51 Pearl Street. This is for your consideration, LPA Resolution 2024-04. A resolution of the Fort Myers Beach Local Planning Agency approving with conditions variance 2024-0100, requesting variances from LDC Table 34-3 of 13 feet from the street setback for a front setback of 12 feet, a variance of 3 feet from the west side setback for a side setback of 4 feet 6 inches for the mechanical equipment and balcony, and another variance of 15.11% from the building coverage for a building coverage of 55.11% to build a new single-family structure in the RM zoning district for the property located at 51 Pearl Street, Fort Myers Beach, Florida, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you, Nancy.
You would want to qualify anyone who wishes to give testimony as an expert at this time.
Well, Jennifer has already been qualified by the town.
Judith.
Judith. Why did I call you Jennifer?
No
You
name.
kind of look like a Jennifer. And I hate to tell you this, but as soon as you will hear, as soon as I say somebody's name wrong, it just sticks. So if I call you Jennifer again,
From now on.
I apologize.
If you're looking at me, I'll assume you mean me.
I will mean you, Judith, okay. You've already been qualified as an expert, being here with the town, correct?
This is my first time in a
This is our
public
first
meeting.
time here.
Okay, well then, let's qualify you. Would you give us your qualifications?
Yes, I am a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners and a member of the American Planning Association. I have a master's degree in urban planning and an undergraduate degree in geography, and have worked in urban planning for many years, 15 plus at this point. So,
Thank you, Judith,
Okay.
I appreciate that. Could I have a motion, please, to accept Judith as an expert in her field?
I'll move.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Okay,
Second.
there's a motion and a second, is there any objection to that motion? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Is there anyone else who is going to appear as an expert in this case?
Just representing yourself.
No, okay. Go ahead. Thank you, Judith.
Madam Chair, we
Yes.
do want to verify that the property owner, who I believe is present today, that she's received a copy of the materials that have been presented to you all.
Penny, have you received a copy of the materials that we have reviewed for your case? Here, come on up for a second.
She can-
All I received was a staff report. There was no attaching, like, there was no other materials attached to it, just a report.
Okay, so what we can do is, if one of our staff members can just share with her the materials that the LPA has received, so she's aware of those as well. And then
Nobody
we
has it
could
in
start
writing.
with the presentation, if you like.
Okay. So
Um,
Penny, Amy, are you going to give her something?
Judith.
I'm
Or-
okay, I'm okay.
Okay, so we just want to make sure that everything that the LPA has, that they have read about your property, that you are aware of what they have read. So if they read something wrong, you'll be able to correct it.
Did you by chance review the agenda online?
I did not. I
You
got
did
an
not.
email saying that here's the staff report. I did not realize that there was an agenda.
The staff report is
staff-
pretty much what
that's
is
it.
in the
Okay,
agenda,
okay.
so
Then
Okay.
that's-
So
we
you've
just
reviewed
want to
it.
make
Yeah.
sure to have a level playing field.
Okay.
Okay, I think
Thank you, Penny.
Judith will
first.
announce first, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Penny.
Okay.
We'll call you back up in a minute. I'd just like to add, I received an email from Roger Hamilton and from somebody else that I cannot remember, but Amy, you have those, I'm assuming they were distributed to all the LPA members, correct?
Yes.
Correct,
All
they
right,
were,
just to put that on the
there
record.
was one from Roger Hamilton and one from a Don Courier.
Yes, that's right. That was
It
right.
was just the two, though, right?
Yes,
Just the two.
correct.
Do you have copies to share with our property owner?
I can forward them to her.
Okay.
Okay, Judith.
Good morning. This application is a variance for 51 Pearl Street. There are 3 areas in which the applicant is asking to vary from the land development code. The first is the minimum street setback of 25 feet. In this case, as you've already discovered if you've been to the property, it's not a true platted street fronting the
Yeah.
property, but the code is clear that it says street or easement, that you have to have that front setback. So in this case, that code section will apply to this property, even though it's an easement and not a true platted street. So they're asking for a variance from the front street setback, which should be 25 feet, and a reduction of that to 12 feet from the front setback. The second place is a variance from the side setback requirement, which should be 7.5 feet. The applicant is asking for that side setback to be 4.5 feet. And the overall size of the house exceeds the maximum lot coverage if the lot coverage ordinance that you just spoke about, if that becomes approved by town council, limiting to 40%. This property as presented is a 55.11% lot coverage. So it's about 15% over the maximum. It does also exceed the FAR as it stands now. The subject property, as you know, is a beachfront lot. It's adjacent to Pearl Street, even though the address is Pearl Street, it's a little bit off of Pearl Street, and accessible through that easement. The staff member who worked with the applicant on this is unfortunately ill at the moment, which is why I'm presenting on his behalf. But he worked with the applicant on this application and the development of plans for the house. You can see the house itself, plus there's a covered deck, and the way the code requires that lot coverage, we're including that covered deck at the rear of the property as part of that overall lot coverage, because it is attached to the property, and included there. The applicant, as you know, is here and can better explain to you exactly what the reason for their variance. The side setback, I will point out, relates to AC mechanical equipment, which is attached to the side of the house, but is also then being covered by a balcony. So I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Judith. Dawn, do you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. How about you, Jim?
None.
Doug?
No, ma'am.
Jane?
I was wondering, with the street not being a street and being an easement, that if that doesn't change anything at all as far as the setback, because, go ahead.
No, the code is clear in this case because it says street or easement, that the front setback is to the street or the easement.
Okay.
Other questions at the moment, Jane?
I just, on my property, it doesn't seem to be that, but, I mean, as far as the easement that we have with the 3 properties that are involved, but, so I just didn't understand it to be like that. Okay.
Jim?
This proposed structure is larger than the house that was there before Ian, correct?
I'm not familiar with the previous structure, but I believe so. I know that Eli let the homeowner know about the option, the build back option, and they chose not to go that route.
John?
That was gonna be my question, as I understood it was
I
a
have another
cottage, and
question.
was the cottage build back going to be something that would be forwarded to the applicant as an option?
I mean, they can answer that question, but I believe that to be the case. But for financial, the cost of building, they wanted the larger home.
Sure.
Jane?
So do you know if the previous house did sit forward of the setback line that,
I
was the
don't,
25
I don't
foot?
know that. Maybe the applicant knows that, but in choosing not to go with the build back, then you're held to the current regulation.
Yeah. Okay, Judith, thank you very much. We'll ask the applicant, Penny. Just, you know what, do the hokey pokey or take a deep breath or just don't worry.
I would never do public speaking in school. But anyway.
Most people hate it.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
You can move the microphone over, there you go.
Thank you very much. My name is Penny, as previously mentioned. I bought the cottage, it was a cottage, 51 Pearl Street. It was one of the original cottages built in 1942. It was going to be my retirement homestead, and of course, like Ian changed everybody's lives, it changed my plans as well. If it was built today, that same cottage, it would not meet the requirements of the setback. It would be forward by 8 feet into the closer to the front property line. The road is mentioned, and I'll just reiterate, it's not actually a public street. It comes off of Pearl Street, in turn it's an easement driveway. So the frontage is actually on an easement driveway, not a public street. The lot is fairly large, it is a large lot, but the buildable area is really small. And not only is it small, but it's irregular. One of the lot lines is on an angle, and I have this, if I may give
Yeah.
that to you.
Just,
Give it to Amy, give them all to Amy and she'll
should be
pass
just
them on to us.
to give it to you, but.
Thank you.
So this actually is the old survey, and I've just drawn a red line where the buildable area is, just to highlight that. As you can see, the cottage was a lot closer to the easement property line, or what they're calling the front property line, than
Oh, the red line, okay.
the red line than
I don't see a red
I
line.
don't see a red line around, so it comes back my way.
Oh, there's one
It's
red
that-
line.
Oh, it's
Call
this.
that shape trapezoid.
Okay.
It's this.
Do you all see this?
So because of the shape of the lot and it being so
Yeah, we got
irregular, and the one side only being 58 feet, it has presented an enormous challenge to design a house that would actually fit on the lot within those setbacks and within the lot coverage. And as I was talking about earlier, is that the lot coverage, the impervious coverage on this application is under 20%, I believe it's 18%. And how the planning department advised my designer to calculate that was going to be all the structure coverage and any pavement or any driveway surface as a percentage of the entire lot, not just the buildable area. So that differs from the lot coverage calculation, in that the lot coverage calculation is just using that red outline that I've
Yeah,
shown you.
yeah.
So essentially, in order to have come up with a design that is financially feasible to build, that, you know, part of my retirement plan was going to be that I had paid off the mortgage on the cottage. I was going to move down here and live here, and now that's not feasible. And the insurance I got from the cottage was just negligible. You know, they only insure the structure, so it's just so negligible that I am going to have to build something that is financially feasible, in the sense that I will be able to hopefully do a little bit of rental on it, so that I can, again, because I have to now, you know, I'm starting from scratch, starting over, right? And it took me a long time to just figure out if I could do it, if I could actually do it, and I think I can. So, but with challenges. I'm not sure what else I can say, other than it's a large lot, but the buildable area is quite small and unique in its shape. It's located on an easement and not a public street, and it is an irregular lot. It's located between the Surf Song condominium, and then there's a house, 41 Pearl, then my now vacant lot, and then the Diamond Head. And the easement that I'm looking for with the air conditioners to put, it's not for the whole
Yeah.
house, it's just for the air conditioning, and a small balcony to help protect the air conditioners, is on the Surf Song parking lot side. So there's no neighbor there, it's a parking lot, so that there'd be no, and I did that to save my other, I didn't wanna put it on the other side, because obviously I have a neighbor that side. So having said all that, I would like to speak a little bit about the emails that I were just given, and I know that I know that many people are going to be upset when I build, and I feel very badly about it, and I truly do, and I wish I didn't have to build that. If I could build that cottage on the grade, on the ground like it was before, or very close to the ground, I would. But the building requires you to now go up. We all know that, right? And we know the reasons for it, and obviously they're very good reasons for all that. So when you talk about line of sight from the Surf Song building, all those units are on the side of the building. They're not actually on the front of the building. So just by the fact of building there, I'm going to block a lot of people's views, whether it's 12 feet this way or 12 feet that way. It's really immaterial. All those views are going to be blocked. And I have another exhibit, if I may share that with the members. And I understand that, and it's unfortunate, but it can't be helped. I'm not the one making the rules as far as how high you have to build, and the people had good views over my little cottage.
Yeah.
So now that's going to change, and anyway, and I can just not help it. It's the only other option is not to build, and I don't want to be defeated that way. I want to carry on and not have a defeatist attitude. So that's really my presentation, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer those.
Okay, give us a second to look at this, and, all right, questions for Penny. Jim, you have
No,
questions?
I'm good, thank you.
How about you, Don?
No questions.
Doug?
No, I don't have any questions.
Jane?
I do, but not for you.
Okay, Jim?
I think we all know that there's water, flooding, drainage issues on the beach. And the request that you have on the lot coverage, did you give any consideration to making up some of that difference between the 40% and the 50-some percent underground storage, or anything to try and help with stormwater compensation?
Well, I did not, because the stormwater impervious calculation came out at under 20%. So, that was a very good number, you're allowed up to 67%. So I did not give any consideration to that. The house was designed
But
based.
that's including the property on the other side of the coastal control line.
That's right.
Which we
Yes.
heard earlier today you can't use.
Right.
Oh,
You can
well,
for that calculation.
You can
You
for
can
that
for
calc-
that calculation, but
But
you
not
can't
for
for
the
her
storm, yeah.
calculation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for stormwater runoff, that's, you are allowed to use that apparently, so, but,
Penny, do you get the notion of this coverage, of the lot coverage concept? It is in part for stormwater, for covering the area, so even though you get, it's kind of conflicting, isn't it, that impervious, so even though you get to use your entire lot for the impervious calculation, so your number is little, that calculation you can't use the whole lot for your lot coverage calculation, but it's still the same impact. Do you follow me?
yes.
So what Jim's asking you is, did you give any consideration or any thought to how you could minimize the impact of your lot coverage request?
Well, when we designed the house, we took the original footprint of 35 by 35, and then on the second floor, we added square footage and had the deck below it. So the original cottage was just slightly under, well, if you take the interior wall space, it was approximately 900 and some square feet. And the first floor of that without the deck is very similar in size. So that's how the designer went about it. It wasn't until we realized that we were, after the design was done, that we realized that we were not going to be able to fit it on the lot. My designer that I had did not realize that the setback would be 25 feet. I don't know why he didn't, but he did not. So we looked at it and he said, well, apply for a variance, so.
So
that's what we did.
your footprint is the same with your new house as it was for the old house?
Without the deck, yes, yes, very close. Very close.
But
Yeah,
there's
the only-
building above it, the second
But
floor
I've added a second
is-
floor, that's right, that's right.
So when you look straight down on it, the second story has a much larger footprint. It includes the
Yeah,
deck.
That's right,
Yeah.
that's right, yeah.
Did you consider the cottage build back as being a route to go?
I wasn't
your
aware of
property?
that cottage, this is the first I heard of it, was, yesterday, I think, when Jan mentioned the, cottage build back, I had no knowledge of it. I never talked about it with the gentleman that I was dealing with.
With Eli?
With Eli, now, he might have mentioned it months and months ago,
And you might not have understood it.
yeah, but it never was raised as an item that should be considered.
Penny, hold on a second. Did you have something to say, sir?
Yes, when I spoke with Eli about this, we did talk about the cottage code, so I know that he did mention it at some point, but when I asked him about it, what he said is that it wouldn't allow you to build your second story and that you wanted your second story.
I did want my second story, yes, but I was not explained what it actually was, so, but
Well,
yeah.
I
with that-
apologize, so,
yeah,
that
no.
in my
I have a
discussions,
question.
yeah.
Why would that be any different from the cottage lots that we are allowing on the north end, that they can come in and get a variance if they do the cottage lot, and they can get a variance to put a second floor on?
That
Why?
is the same thing. This is essentially the same thing.
So, why would
This
it
is-
not allow her to have a second floor?
No, the cottage build back is a not variance option. So
Okay.
if you're doing the cottage build back, you're using the same square footage as you previously had.
Right.
Above flood, but only a single story. So that was the agreed upon for cottage.
Without a
build.
variance, but you could get a
Yeah, you could-
variance.
Yeah, which is essentially the path that she's taking here.
So, Sarah, while we have you, all the items that are, non-conforming with this request are triggered only by the addition of that second floor. The setbacks, all the stuff that she would get with a cottage build back doesn't count now. If she puts on the second floor, she gotta ask for all those variances, or just the second floor?
I believe the cottage code requires that you have a minimum of a 5-foot setback. Let me look at the cottage code real quick again and
Wouldn't that be
refresh
pertinent?
myself, but,
Yes.
I don't know that it is, because at the end of the day, it won't allow her to have the second story, which is the square footage she's indicating that she does need.
And again,
But I can,
I just think common sense conversation is around, we're talking about the height of the building now as being the variable. Everything else, without that second thing, she could rebuild back up to the right over floodplain levels. So we're talking about a structure that's a little taller, a story taller. And I don't know about the 5 foot, you'll have to check on that, but if that's singularly the variance, and therefore all the rest of the variance requests are triggered by that additional square footage, it changes my mind about how I see this request. I'm just going through that process.
Is there a place that you could put the air conditioner underneath the building and still have it elevated and meet the setbacks or the code for the air conditioner?
Yes, I could change that location.
So that could eliminate the 4.5 foot setback for the mechanical equipment. So then what we are just talking about is that, and
But it's not just the second floor, it's the second floor and the deck.
that's,
That deck triggers an expansion also.
can that be done as an
That's the AC
accessory
activity.
and,
It's
Um,
covered by the second floor.
It is.
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
that's
It
true,
is.
okay, okay,
It's
sorry.
under the footprint of the
Of the
second.
second
The
floor.
second floor is
I see, okay.
basically the
Large.
Oh,
footprint.
right,
There you
right,
go.
right.
So one of the other items that I discussed with Eli was that as far as the front yard setback goes, if I were not asking for this variance and if I designed it so the deck was at the front of the house, then I would not require a variance, because apparently you're allowed to do a 10-foot deck at the front of the house,
And your front is street.
and my front is street. So at the end of the day, it's just kind of the same thing, but
Oh,
Reverse.
yes, but it's not.
But it's flipped, yeah,
It's
yeah,
not, cause it's covered by the second floor.
Right.
yeah.
That's the difference.
Yes, that
Yeah,
is the
yeah.
difference.
Also, whoever's presenting, I would like, from the page 326, the diagram that is there on the lot next door, can you tell me if that garage is going to be, built on that property? Next door, it looks like it's very forward of whatever her building is gonna be. Not yet.
No, not yet. You'll have your chance though.
I don't have the full packet, so I apologize, I don't have the exact page number. My understanding is that the house that is next door, that is in construction now, did not need a variance.
Okay, but there is a garage on the plan that is
Strong.
completely forward of this building towards the easement that looks like it's got a 4-foot separation to the easement.
The house that's beside me is not a new build, it's just a renovation, it's been existing there
Oh.
for many years.
I think what you're seeing on the plans is
The former,
the former structure, that's not what's there.
So that garage is not going to be built.
No, it's not there.
It's not there.
Was the original 35-foot by 35-foot house, did it also have like the 12-foot setback that you're showing now? Was that
it-
wall in the same place?
it was not exactly, no, it was 17 feet, 17
Okay.
from that front line. But it was 5 feet back off the CCL, that's where the difference is, off the construction control line.
Okay, do we have any other questions for Penny at the moment? We can bring her back up, but we could hear some public comment.
One more question. Can you build directly to the CCL line?
Yes, apparently so. I'm not an expert, but I've been told that you can. You just can't go over the CCL
right.
line. So, the way that it's been plotted on the tentative plot plan was we allowed a 1 foot, grace, for lack of a better word, you know, to allow this.
So that's only
furnace.
1 foot there on the left-hand side of, well, the right-hand side as you're looking at the Gulf. There's only 1 foot there?
Yes.
It looks like there's more room to move back. It just seems with the building next door being able to be so much more forward, it surprises me that the deck is such a conflict. Because, you know, it's clearly totally blocking your view to the south, that it just, I don't know.
Penny, why don't you just sit in that front seat right there?
Okay.
Don't scoot all the way to the back. We'll call you back up. Okay, I'm gonna open public comment. Is there anybody who'd like to comment? Yes, sir. You would state your name for the record and whether or not you've been sworn in.
Yes, William Mizell. I live at Surfsong. I'm the president of the HOA there. A couple things, and it's not the height that we're worried about, it's the setback coming closer to our property, because it's our easement that she is on that allows her to get into her place. Moving that back will block a whole lot more views and access on that. But I want to get to one thing first. You're talking about 55 feet in the drainage. I've got a picture of it with nothing on it. This was the rain the other day, what our property looks like without 55 square foot on there. I don't have, so if you want to pass that around, that's the way it is today. I'd also like to see the information that she provided you guys, because we were not privy to that, just she's handed that out. Am I allowed to see that?
Sure.
Sure. Yeah.
Can I?
You can look at, you can look at mine.
Yeah, because I'm not sure what she handed you, and I just kind of like to, before we testify. But, yeah, the biggest thing is that setback.
Yep.
And again, well, you can look at the drainage. So if you're gonna put 55% on that, you got a real problem there. And I don't think there was anything that I saw in the plans designed to help us out on that. You said earlier about Bonita Springs Road, exactly what this is gonna be. If you got 55 foot out there, or 55% blockage on that, you know, it's supposed to be for us owners, people on Estero, whatever, to see the golf. You've totally blocked that out. We're not gonna be able to see that. Thank you. But you can see on the drainage here. She also said that all the houses are on the side there. That's not true. We have
Of course you have
units
cost.
on the very front, so, yeah, so, that was an incorrect statement on that. But that's the biggest thing is, currently, they use our parking lot already, because they don't have enough room with that, so they're impeding on our parking lot. And if they close it down to 12 foot or whatever, then that's gonna be a problem on our property. So I don't, for that alone, and bringing it back away from the, onto our easement or close to our easement will just, reduce the visual on it. We know 3 stories, we know when we bought those that's a possibility, so that has nothing to do with it. But again, putting it back, our C, D, and E stacks, they'll lose their view, and that's one of the big things on that.
Thank you very much for your
All right.
comments.
All right, thank you.
We appreciate you being here.
My turn. I'm Nick Dundee. I'm wearing scarlet and gray, sorry.
Oh, that's fine.
Nick Dundee, I'm a appointed officer, registered agent, so I got 2 of the postcards. The agenda packet that had the site plan, or I guess I should say the survey,
Yes, sir.
is 18 years old. So that's why I wanted to comment, because you
Okay.
can't tell what the house on 41 Pearl Street is, and it's okay, you know. But I am, as registered agent, I'm gonna comment like Bill. We are totally opposed, just to that front setback. The rules are 25 foot, and we put our fence in by our pool, and we were told we wanted to go 20, and we were told no, the rules are 25. Doesn't matter if it's a private road, which Pearl Street is a private road. It was abandoned, or whatever, it's not abandoned.
Vacated.
Vacated.
Vacated many years ago, so we have to maintain that, the pavement. That easement is the same thing. The rules don't say that it matters if it is a private road or public road. We want Penny to play by the rules, just like we did. And you're gonna build a beautiful house, and it's gonna look great. It just, our big objection is that 25 foot, because it's gonna screw up our view corridors for C-deck. It's gonna be a parking nightmare, it's gonna be a flooding issue, and like Bill had the pictures. And just play by the rules, just do the side setback for the air conditioning equipment, we thought that's a great consideration for Jamie's house, that, I mean, if you wanna do that, and if you can break that out as a variance, we can live with that. The 55% rule, if she goes back with going back to 25 foot instead of 12 foot, she'll probably meet the back to the 40-some%. But yeah, our big issue is the front setback. Thank you. And staff apparently recommends denial.
Thank you very much.
Sir, can I bring you right back up?
Yes,
Can you
ma'am.
clarify for the record, you're the appointed officer and registered agent or what?
For Surfsong Condo Association.
Thank you.
Sorry.
It's okay.
And Bill and I are 2 out of the 3 residents that live there year round, so there's not many that live there year round.
Thank you very much. Okay, is there anybody else who has public comment? Hearing none, we'll close the, oh,
Yep.
and, Albert.
I didn't stand up earlier. I was just listening in, so I'm just going to make a couple comments. Similar to
Albert,
other
say your
projects.
name for the record.
Sure, Albert Danvers, Studio AD architect. I am not her
Were you
agent.
sworn in?
I didn't. I was
No.
just listening.
She can swear you in real quick.
If I find my script, I can.
Just swear.
Today?
And choose your words carefully,
In
Albert.
November, I will.
If you'll raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear and affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
All right,
I
he's
do.
been sworn.
Just a couple of comments as well too. I know it's fairly challenging to build houses, and people are used to things that were there before, and things that have to change and evolve. So, a couple of things I'm listening into, and just to clarify, I'm not her architect, I'm not her agent. Just listening into this. These are similar things that we're hearing from other clients. These are similar things we're going to be coming to you as well for other projects. So, a lot of similarities. Building obviously in the DEP, bottom beam is 19.333 feet. Existing grade is about roughly 4 or 5 in that area. It can vary. So the bottom of the beam of any brand new home is already going to be 14 feet off the ground. The beam and the floor thickness adds another 2 feet to that, so you're 16 feet. It's the amount of stairs you need to get to that first elevated floor sucks up a lot of real estate. So by looking at her floor plans and you go to a 25-foot setback, you take an extra 12 more feet off of that house, you can visualize what happens to the house, both on the second and third floor. You need 26 risers to get to that elevation. You know, obviously this is an RM zoning district, so your height doesn't start to the bottom of the beam from FEMA, and your 35-foot height restriction, that's a very tall house going to be built next to that. Obviously the house next door is getting repaired right now directly to the east of hers. That's an older home, but it's newer compared to older homes on the beach. I think putting the AC equipment on the north side makes sense, because I think the intent for a lot of jurisdictions that have these restrictions for air conditioning systems not going to setback all came out of noise and visibility. Well, you're facing Diamond Head. It's an open area as well too. So I think they're doing a perfect job as not putting on the neighbor side so it doesn't bounce between the buildings. But it has to be elevated. I know the comment came up earlier, can we put it into the building? You cannot.
Okay.
You have to be at that 19.33 feet for any mechanical equipment, generator, air condition. Meters can go down low, that's different. But mechanical equipment has to be that area. So there's no choice to put that underneath the building.
Okay, thanks.
The other thing is stormwater. Although you're allowed to use a whole lot area that goes again past this line here towards the Gulf, you got to understand that all that sand, when it rains, it goes right through. Okay, no stormwater design is going to be approved in her building permit process unless it's designed to contain what your regulations say within the buildable area. No stormwater system can go into that EC zoning. There's lots of engineering ways that can be done. I don't think that should be a subject to be brought up right now, because again, when she goes through permitting, her stormwater engineer had to design something. We do this on like in commercial buildings. I'm not sure what the Whale's doing for stormwater, but a lot of buildings have zero lot coverage or zero areas of pervious. They do underground chambers. There's
Yep.
ways to control that water so it doesn't flood your neighbor. To assume that it can't be done, plus you never get CO if it doesn't work that way. We all have these berms. We all are doing this right now. You can't dump your stormwater into your adjacent properties at all. Other jurisdictions let you do that. You guys do not, which is good because you're a barrier island. I feel the front setback, that's something you guys can discuss in itself, but it does detrimentally hurt that floor plan. If you look at that, you take another 12 foot out of that footprint. Stairs suck up a lot of real estate as well too these days. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Okay, hearing none, we close public comment. Hold on, Penny. Any other questions for staff? Maybe we'll have another one. Penny, you have follow-up comment? Any other questions for Penny also? Go ahead, Penny.
I just wanted to comment on the picture that was presented on the telephone today. That was a picture of the current condition of the lot. A lot of the sand, when the building was swept away, it took a lot of the sand with it as well, and there is quite a deep hole in the lot, and that is where the puddle is right now. That's not typical of that lot, and that will be, of course, remedied when we do the new build. So I just wanted to comment on that. The other thing I wanted to comment on, the driveway easement. I've been there for 10 years, and never have I ever parked on the driveway easement nor encroached on their property whatsoever, except for the one time when we were doing the cleanup after the hurricane. I did put my pile of debris onto Pearl Street for pickup with the for the town to pick it up. It's mostly contractors that are doing the work next door that are parking in their parking lot and parking on the easement. But
Penny, can I ask you a question about that easement? It was referred to as Surf Song's easement. Is it an easement that, it seems to me that easement probably belongs to all these properties. Or is it simply an easement for Surf Song?
it's not simply an easement for Surf Song. The legality of ownership, I'm not aware of, I don't know, so I can't speak to that. But I do know that my lawyer said I have every right to use the easement. The easement
Okay.
is there to access these properties.
Okay. Okay. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you.
Any further questions for Penny? Okay, thank you very much, we appreciate it.
Anita, can I make a comment?
I'm sorry?
Done.
Oh, Dawn,
Can I make
yes,
a
Dawn,
comment? Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, just, I have the, liberty of sitting at my computer and looking, and I'm looking at, a Google Earth image, and,
Yep.
I'm a little confused, cause I can see in the Google Earth image, it looks like the outline or foundation or walls of this cottage, it looks like. And then, when I look at the drawing, I'm puzzled, cause it looks like if that's the pool that's on Estero Boulevard, that is Surf Songs,
Yeah.
it looks like a lot farther back. So is that another lot there, or?
It's
are
a
we
parking
setting
lot.
back off of the,
It's a parking lot.
oh, okay. Okay, cause it didn't,
No, it's
okay.
not a
it
parking
looks
lot.
sand.
I don't think so.
No,
It looks like sand to me, like there's asphalt to the south. The pool is directly on Estero. I should just share my screen.
share your screen. Penny, you have to sit down. Okay,
You can't answer.
Hold on.
I don't-
Are you gonna show us what you're looking at, Dawn?
I'm trying to, I don't use Zoom very often, I use Teams, so I'm trying to figure out where I can share my screen. There it is, sorry. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, if you look at the picture that she gave us with the red triangle on it or whatever, that has a pretty good visual above for Google, that one.
Yes.
Can anyone see that yet?
Yep.
Okay, see the pool here
Mm-hmm.
on Estero?
Yep.
This doesn't look like a parking lot, this looks like, I don't know what that is, just sand, I don't know if it's vacant space or what, but if in, if you zoom in, you can kinda see the footprint, I believe this is the footprint of her cottage.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So if we're talking about 25 feet, I can't imagine that's much past where if everybody can see my cursor is, past the RV there. I'm just trying to figure out why. Trying to figure out what the concern is. It looks like this is like someone, I think Jane said, this house here is sticking out and is existing is to the south. Of course, you've got Gullwing, parking lot and pool to the north.
Not Gullwing, it's,
Diamond
Diamond Head.
Not Gullwing, sorry, Diamond Head,
Diamond
sorry.
Head.
Yeah, so anyway, I don't know if that helps anyone, but for me, I kinda didn't see it from the drawing, but with the pool way up here on Estero, it seems like I don't know what that is, but that's gotta be 100, maybe not quite that much, 75 feet or so?
Mhm.
They're saying 41 feet.
No.
No?
From the,
41 Pearl, that's a house.
Oh, 41 Pearl.
That's another property, that's not our property.
Oh,
the 51 Pearl is the address we're looking at, right?
Correct.
Okay, so I just put in 51 Pearl Street, Fort Myers Beach, and I
Right.
think this is it right here.
That
Right.
is it.
Someone can
That's
confirm.
correct.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so if you look from the front of that where that foundation was to their pool, I'm just, again, I would have expected there was a house there before or something, but it just looks like a bunch of open space. So I'm just trying to figure out why there was a view concern, because this is probably going to be as tall or taller. This looks like a raised structure here,
Yes.
the one next door.
exactly.
Can I make a clarification?
Yes.
Sure.
There is a piece of property behind the pool, from Estero. There's the pool, and then there's property behind it that is owned by a separate entity. Then there is the Surf Song, what appears to be a parking place, or a parking lot area that's, about 61, when I measure on, GIS, it appears to be about 61 feet from that property to the 51 Pearl and 41 Pearl.
Is that a buildable site?
No, that's an area where it looks like parking is available, and that's part of the easement.
Okay.
Don, what I heard from the condo association was not specific to the height. It was moving the building towards Estero and therefore creating a new blocked corridor regardless of the height. So that's a distinction that I thought I heard the
I agree.
owners
I
indicate.
agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, I would just want to comment that, we're only talking about a 5-foot difference from what,
Allowed to build back in.
Right,
from what she had before.
from what can you enlarge that a little bit more, Don?
Where her place is?
Yeah,
Madam Chair,
Yeah,
you
that-
also want to give the property owner the opportunity to comment on that?
right.
If
So
she has anything to add?
that appears to be where the structure used to be, the footprint, so you can see that it is forward of that other building.
Yeah, that building is
Penny, did you have a
obviously,
comment on this picture?
Yes, that used to be my lovely little cottage that you see there on just with the pylons still there. Where you can see the trailer, where the trailer's parked and the truck, that's actually on the easement. Surf Song did initially allow me to park my trailer there while I got the lot cleaned up, and then now the trailer's been moved onto my lot. But to comment on behind the pool there's another lot. It used to be the Jewel Box Cottage, and that is a lot that is buildable, and that they are likely going to be coming to you. I don't know, but if you can go further out, not that pool, that's the Surf Song pool. But sorry, that was the Diamond Head pool. The Surf Song pool that's on Estero, right beside that is another lot. And then there's the parking lot, then the easement, and then my property. We do have some really good pictures. Yeah.
Okay, let's rein this back in with pictures and everything else, and actually look at the request before us, okay? Okay, thank you, Penny.
Madam Chair, during the presentation, I don't know that we emphasized what the criteria was when staff was giving their recommendation.
Go ahead.
As I mentioned, your decision is going to be based on, is there evidence to satisfy the criteria that's in your code? So if we could have staff restate those.
The criteria, Judith, would you like to state the criteria?
Yes. There are 5 criteria under findings and conclusions section of the staff report that you are asked to review and consider in making a determination for the variance. The first.
Use the microphone, please.
Is this not on? No?
It doesn't seem
You
like
can't
it's
put-
Podium.
Put it super close.
There you go.
So as I said, there are 5 criteria. The first, there are/are not exceptional or extraordinary conditions or circumstances that are inherent to the property in question, or that the request is/is not for de minimis variance under circumstances or conditions where rigid compliance is not essential to protect public property. Staff felt that the choices made here are design choices, not necessarily particular to this lot, and do not represent the de minimis variance that would be possible to create a home on this lot. B, that the conditions justifying the variance are/are not the result of actions the applicant has taken after the adoption of the regulation in question. The conditions justifying the variance are the result of the applicant's design choices. So again, that is part of the criteria that led staff to recommend denial of the variance. C, that the variance granted is/is not the minimum variance that will relieve the applicant of an unreasonable burden caused by the application of the regulation in question. Again, the design of the home could be smaller, and so we did not feel that this represented the de minimis options available. D, that the granting of the variance will/will not be injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. In this case, staff did not believe that detrimental. I don't know if this is going in and out. That granting this variance is not necessarily detrimental. As the applicant stated, the mechanical equipment is placed on the side of the home that is abutting the Diamond Head Resort and not the immediate single-family neighbor. But you have heard from members of the public regarding views and such. Further down in D, that the granting of the variance will/will not be injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. The proposed location of the single-family residence, being 12 feet from the front property line, will be closer to the easement than the neighboring property to the east, and the plane of the homes would not match along that easement, and potentially views could be negatively impacted. The previous home being 1 story from grade, even if it was set forward, would not have had the same impacts as a 3-story larger structure set in the same location. That the granting of the variance will not, did I read that one already? Injurious to the neighborhood, otherwise detrimental. The increase in building coverage would cause the home to have more square footage under roof, which would create more massing of the structure. However, the site would not exceed the maximum 67% impervious as required by the code. Moving on to E, that the conditions or circumstances on the specific piece of property for which the variance is sought are/are not of so general or recurrent a nature as to make it more reasonable and practical to amend the regulation in question. The conditions or circumstances on this specific property for which a variance is sought are not general in nature and do not warrant a code change. So due to those considerations, staff recommended denial.
Thank you, Judith, very much. Is there any discussion on this further? And if not, may I have a motion, please?
I have a little bit of discussion, if I may.
Please.
I think I agree with the staff recommendation. I think the owner should consider the cottage build-back policy for this piece of property, which is small and difficult, and it had a cottage on it. And with the cottage build-back policy, we have relaxed, you know, to allow people to build back a cottage, but this applicant is asking to build back a four-bedroom house, not a cottage. And I don't think I can, I have to agree with the staff recommendation.
Is that regarding, I just have a question for clarification. I think staff had several of the criteria that they found were not present. However, I think compatibility with the neighbors. Did you agree with all of staff's recommendations regarding the criteria, or is there a specific one?
I agreed with all of them. I actually agreed that it's probably not a hardship on the neighbors, but I just, I think I think the cottage build-back is a more appropriate avenue for the owner on this piece of property.
Is there any other discussion?
Yes. If they do a cottage build back, can they get the same footprint forward of where they were so that they can, I mean, 900 square feet on the base level of house, even though it is elevated, it is not a large house, even though you're gonna have a second floor. Can they get the same space so that they could have a porch on the back? No?
So the cottage code, it says that the modifications will be the minimum required to allow a home with a footprint of the same square footage as was previously legally constructed on that property and 2 stories in height above flood elevation with no enclosure below base flood elevation. So I apologize, it's 1 story over flood elevation, and that the modified setbacks may not be less than 5 feet, and that the modified setbacks may not be encroached by mechanical equipment. So your specific question was regarding if they could build back. It looks, I mean, so if they had a 33 by 30 structure plus deck, I mean, so they'd get the same interior square footage. That's 990 square feet. That is the total interior area, because the bottom floor cannot be enclosed. They can only have 1 story above flood. But this is a by right allowance, is the
Correct.
cottage, you know,
Correct.
so they would only be allowed to build a single story.
But they could do a
990.
variance.
That's what they're here for.
I know, but they could
No.
do a variance to the build back.
But she could ask for a variance to do a 2-story.
But you know what?
That's-
I'm gonna stop this because it's not what's before us. And so my apologies to the audience too and people who are watching us at home. Our desire is so strong to help property owners that we end up involved in this conversation, and it's not what's before us. What's before us is this particular request. And in this particular instance, Penny is gonna have the option to go before the town council. If it's denied here, she can go before the town council and plead her case there. But we can't continue to redesign her project for
Okay,
her. So-
I'll just go back to the fact that I do feel that it is an unusual lot, and it is, a small lot with small buildable area, so I think it does meet the criteria for, the variance in the fact that, it is not a standard lot to build on. And, the angles make it very difficult. I don't think you could go much less than 900 square feet to have a reasonable house to start with, even if you had that as your only floor. So I do feel that there is reason to consider, and, because, once again, 26 steps going up to that house has to go somewhere, and that takes up an awful lot of land space. And the fact that the house was forward of the 25-foot setback previously, gives me cause to consider that it's not necessarily something that she created, but that's what she had before. So, those are my views on that.
Okay, is there any other discussion?
Yeah, I agree with the staff report. I think that the mechanical equipment is actually a smart decision and is beneficial to the project. I think the concern is just moving it back and extending it from 35 feet to an additional 15 feet
That's right.
on the footprint. That is, I think, the real crux of the matter. And to my view, well, the staff's recommendations are correct. It's a design choice to build a larger footprint than was previously there.
Would you like to make a motion, John?
Yeah, I would like to move to deny the variance request
And would that be for the reasons as set forth in the staff report?
for the reasons as set forth in the staff report, correct?
Thank you.
I
Is
would
there a
second that,
second?
yes.
There's a motion, there's a second, is there, Sarah?
For clarification, there's 3 different variances.
It's all inclusive.
All inclusive, yeah. Staff.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, your vote, John?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
Jane?
I'm gonna go with nay.
Jim?
Aye.
Aye. Petty, I'm sorry, you're gonna go on to the town council and plead your case there. Okay? Thank you very much. The motion, the variance is denied. Oh, you know,
Can I request a break?
yes, absolutely. We're gonna take a 5-minute break. Oh.
So who jinxed us?
How about you, Doug?
No, ma'am.
Jane?
Side only.
Jim?
None.
John?
I also visited and spoke with the owners.
I visited and spoke with the owners. It was very nice. Dawn, did you have any ex parte? If you're there?
No ex parte.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll go ahead and read the title. This is LPA Resolution 2024-05, a resolution of the Fort Myers Beach Local Planning Agency approving with conditions or denying variance VAR 202-40159 to allow a side street setback variance of 3 feet and 9 inches from the required 15-foot side street setback for a pool enclosure for the pool located at 8180 Lagoon Road and providing for an effective date. Jason?
Good morning, LPA members, staff.
Good morning, good morning.
My name is Jason Smalley. I'm with your Planning and Zoning Department.
You sound
It's
like
yours.
You sound like a game show host.
That's my midlife career change.
Good, okay.
So, as you had mentioned, this is a request for 8180 Lagoon. This is to allow for a side street variance to allow them to develop their screen cage over the footprint of an existing pool on that property. As was mentioned, they're requesting a variance of 3 feet, 9 inches from the required side street setback of 15 feet. So they will be providing a setback of 11 feet, 3 inches, which is generally what the house and the previously varianced pool are set back to now. So again, the footprint of the proposed cage, it would be covering what they've already approved and what has been built already. So again, this was a pool originally that was approved with a setback variance. The previous LPA and Town Council had approved that setback variance to Tarpon Street, which is, if you're not aware, this is a corner lot, so they have 2 road frontages. Excuse me. I would note that the setback requirements at the time that they got the variance are different than they are now. So if you see any discrepancy, right as it, I apologize. It changed right as this one went in. So the request is to reduce the 15-foot setback. Staff has recommended denial on this one simply because, as you can see in the staff report in findings and conclusions of B, the request is something that they wanted. This is an expansion of a pool deck that had existed before. And so staff's assessment of the request is that they could have kept what they had. They've come in and get variances as they are today. So the screen cage is again something they would like to have, and it is not a requirement to make the house work, and it's a design choice ultimately what they're asking for. Staff is here for any questions or concerns that you may have, and the applicant is here as well.
Jason, can I just ask you a question? Did it influence you at all that there were already variances granted on this house? And that this doesn't change the footprint or anything of those variances?
So, if I remember correctly, staff didn't give full-throated approval to the original ask. It was approved, so we have what we have. But the assessment here in B really just relates to the screen cage itself. Now, is a screen cage something nice to have down here during the summer or during bug season? Some people would say that it's an absolute necessity. My wife, for instance. But what they are asking for is not a necessity for the use of the home or the use of the pool at this point, and it really is a preference that they want to also get a variance to cover their entire pool deck.
Okay. Questions for staff?
Follow up to your
Jim?
question,
Sure.
Madam Chair. So did you recommend denying the pool variance as staff?
I have to go back to it, but it was probably set up as a conditional yes, if anything. But I apologize, I don't have 2320 right in front of me.
I didn't, you said we didn't give it a full throated. I wasn't sure if you meant that you had approved it with conditions or recommended deny like you are here.
I apologize, I don't have that answer right in front of me.
No problem either way, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Jason? Don,
I have
anything?
What, I swear we looked at this at like one of the first LPA meetings I
Yeah.
was at with Jason Green and discussed this. Is this backup or something? I don't remember it being pulled. Was there some other variance that came in right around, I guess 2 years ago after the storm?
That is yeah, actually Sarah's got the information in front of her.
Excellent.
So this was heard by the town council March 6th, 2023. It was to allow a pool setback of 1 foot from the required 15-foot side street setback. So when they came in, they originally were asking for a larger setback, but that was when the 25-foot street setback from all streets was required. This was the same time we were doing the corner lot setback change. So when it came down to it, they only had to ask for a 1-foot variance for what they wanted for the pool. At the time, they did not want the pool enclosure. That wasn't part of the proposed information that we received. So that was not discussed as part of this. I'm looking for the staff recommendation. I'm finding the
But
resolution.
we discussed the pool deck, right?
Yes,
I mean,
we
it
discussed
came
the
before
pool.
LPA. Yeah.
Zach, that's correct.
And the request relative to
354.
footprint and structure is identical to the pool?
Right.
Right. The
Yes.
only thing that's changed is the required
Our rules
25.
changed, yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, got it,
Yep.
thank you.
Sarah?
354, the
Page.
page number.
354.
So we did recommend denial last year also.
Okay,
Yeah, I remember discussing this
Yep.
and having
Yeah.
some
good memory, Don.
disagreement with Jason Green on it
Yep,
because the house sits there. Okay.
Yeah.
the
Thank you.
house sits there, exactly. Any other questions for staff?
I'm still a little confused about the finding B, about a variance being larger square footage, which was approved. Maybe I'm just not understanding it correctly, but it's the same setback as was
Previous.
not recommended by staff previously, but granted by council, correct?
I think what's trying to be said there is that the original pool that was there, the request that they asked for was an increase in the square footage, which necessitated having to get the variance.
Got it,
The
okay.
point I think we were trying to say is just, they had a pool, it was usable, they decided that they needed to do this, and thus necessitating the design and the required variances to make that design work.
Okay, that helps me, but there's no material change for
No.
what was put in there.
Not at all. The pool has stayed the same, the pool deck is in the same position as approved.
cage on top of the
That's
pool.
exactly
That's
right.
it, Exactly.
Good to go.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, thank you very much, Jason. The applicant? Is that you, Janelle? FY, she is the jinxer for the meeting time.
Uh-huh.
Go ahead.
Keep that in mind.
Sorry.
Before she starts, can I ask, did you receive a copy of all the materials?
No,
No, you didn't get a copy of the staff report?
no,
Okay.
but I
well-
read it online.
Okay, so you did have a look at it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and there were a number of emails that I think have been circulating regarding this. Have you had an opportunity to look at those?
They were all in support.
They were all
Oh,
supportive.
They're all your
the
neighbors.
neighbor,
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
All right, very
Yes.
good.
Yes.
yeah, there was more than a handful, there was quite a few.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yes, I mean, all we wanna do is build a pool cage around our modified, or our new pool. We just wanted to go out to the edge of the house. We've talked to every neighbor behind us, side of us, kitty corner, down the street, and everybody wrote letters of support. It is a nice pool, and
Beautiful.
we only have,
there is.
we're a corner lot, so we can only have a 4-foot fence. I mean, I think this, for a safety aspect, at least the pool cage will give us a second layer of somebody not jumping the fence to jump into the pool.
Okay.
So.
I'll make it just as pretty as the pool, I promise.
And he's gonna start on Monday.
No, he shouldn't.
Okay.
Just kidding.
Just hold up. Okay. Any questions for the applicant?
Nope.
Thank you, Janelle.
Thank you.
And thank you for your hospitality yesterday. Okay, is there any public comment on this case? Nope, close public comment,
May I make a motion?
please.
I move approval LPA Resolution 2024-05.
I'll second.
And are you finding it consistent with the comprehensive plan?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, oh, yeah,
Yes.
sorry, I didn't know you were
Yes.
directing at me. Yeah.
Sorry, is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, your vote, Jim?
Aye.
And Doug?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Jane?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Congratulations, and thank you very much for being here today.
So now you can start on Monday.
Now you can start on Monday. No, let me just
Madam
say
Chair,
that the,
right.
go ahead,
Appeal.
Nancy.
So when the local planning agency unanimously approves a request for a variance, as they just have, any individual may request an additional hearing be conducted before the town council. If the request for the additional hearing is received within 10 business days by the town clerk. So there is a small
might wait
10-day
10
appeal
days.
period.
You might wanna wait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So members of the public and whoever's watching our meeting today, just be aware of the 10-day period.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Nancy. The next item on our agenda is ordinance 24-20, DCI 2020130, Margaritaville CPD Amendment, 251 Crescent Street. Is there any ex parte, Don?
No.
Jim?
None here.
Doug?
No, ma'am.
Jean?
None.
Jim?
None.
None.
And I have none. So, I'll go ahead and read the title. Ordinance 24-20, an ordinance of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, amending Town of Fort Myers Beach Ordinance Number 2401, and approving deviations for the commercial plan development zoning for the property located at 1170, 1180, 1192, 1204 to 1206 Estero Boulevard, 251 Crescent Street, 1150 Fifth Street, and unaddressed parcels, parcels generally identified as,
Oh, boy.
as strap numbers 24-46-W3-W3-00205.0070, Master Concept Plan, parcel number 3. 24-46-W3-W3-00006.0000, Master Concept Plan number 1. 24-46-23-W3-00206.0060, Master Concept Plan number 1. 24-46-23-W3-00009.0000, Master Concept Parcels 2 and number 5. 194624W4U0494.2609, Master Concept Plan Parcel number 2. 24-46-23W3 00205.0070 194624W4U0491.2610, Master Concept Plan Parcel number 2. 194624W40140B.0070, Master Concept Parcels 2 and 5. 194624W4U0496.2608, Master Concept Parcel number 2, and 194624W4U0498.2607, Master Concept Parcels 2 and 6. Fort Myers Beach, providing for other clarifications as necessary, providing for conflicts of law, Scrivener's error, severability, and providing for an effective date.
Well done.
Tom's asleep.
I need a,
Okay,
I
yes.
need a drink.
No, I'm fine, thank you. Okay, Jason.
Thank you for going through that. Jason
You're
Smalley
welcome.
with your Planning and Zoning Department.
Hold on one second. For future reference, could I just say, as written in our agenda? Or is it really necessary that we read the entire title? It's necessary. It's published.
It is absolutely necessary by the town council. The point of a title of an ordinance is to let the public know what's being decided. When you have all the strap numbers, there's no question that these are the specific
So do you want me to read
properties.
them? Or as we go on, we'll just keep doing the
It's
same thing?
preferable, yes.
Go ahead, Jason.
Excellent. So the request before you today is an amendment of an existing CPD ordinance. The request today is in reference to two signs that exist on the multiple parcels that Anita has spelled out there. As a general orientation for anybody at home, the areas we're talking about here are the corner of Estero Boulevard and Crescent Street on the main Margaritaville site, and then the Aquatic Center site on the beach side of Estero, where Margaritaville's pool is. There's an entranceway there, and the monument sign that's in question today is located there. I guess I should mention that the one on the corner of Crescent and Estero, that is the quote-unquote pole sign that is being requested in this deviation. Before you today are going to be 5 individual deviation requests, 4 general requests. So I hope that's not confusing. There's 4 requests of code, 2 signs, both each need the same request. So there's 5 total deviations involved in this case today. So going through the requests, the pole sign on the corner of Crescent and Estero, pole signs are not allowed by the sign code. So the first request is to allow for a pole type sign there. The second request is also to allow for the pole sign to be taller than is generally allowed for signs. So they are requesting to deviate from the maximum height of 5 feet to allow for the existing 9-foot high pole sign. The third ask is also relevant to both of the signs, and this is to allow for both of the signs to be less than the absolute minimum allowed by code or required by code of 3 feet behind a right-of-way or sidewalk. If you've seen the signs, they're roughly about 6 inches off the back of the existing sidewalks on both properties.
Yep.
And so that's one of the asks is to reduce that 3-foot minimum now down to 6 inches. The fourth allowance is in reference to the monument sign. Again, this is a a deviation request to allow a sign to be taller than the 5-foot maximum as allowed by code. They're requesting for 7.5 foot tall, so that's a deviation request of 2.5 feet additional height. Lastly, the fifth deviation would allow for monument signs, again, to be set back 6 inches from the sidewalk. The recommendation from staff on this one, now that the signs are in there, we haven't been privy to any incidents that have come up from them being there. We are recommending approval with conditions. It should also be mentioned that there are some outstanding light and signage issues that the town is working with FDEP and Fish and Wildlife. That will be, staff requests that, or recommends that it may be a condition of approval to require that issue with the lighting, not on these signs, but other lighting on the site, be addressed as part of the approval to ensure
So are
that.
you asking for that to be number 3 as a condition?
I think so. We were just notified this morning and late yesterday evening that there are still some outstanding questions about other signs, not these signs in question today, but other Margaritaville signs with lighting, and they are working with Chad, our environmental manager, to get those issues resolved. But it may be prudent to just ensure that that is a requirement of approval here, is that process be finished
Okay.
and completed.
But
The signs
that's
were,
not part of their request.
No, but there is a nexus of relevance between the sign deviations that they're asking for and other sign issues such as the lighting issue. If you don't feel that there's a nexus or you don't feel that they're relevant, by all means, leave it off of a condition of approval. We just wanted to make sure that everything was on the table
Because
today.
whatever they have to end up doing, the other signs have got to do with these anyway. They're captured by the decision on the pre-existing signs already,
Well,
once that's determined.
I'm sorry, I don't think I
So
understand
the
the
signs
question.
that are under review or
Mhm.
lighting,
Right.
any decision made on those would be required that all signs on the property comply with that same agreement.
One would think so. I will make a point that the ground signs lighting has already been reviewed by Chad, and that is not in question. These are just other signs that are still outstanding on the site. So the signs before you today ostensibly are in compliance for lighting.
Thank you, Jason. Sarah?
And to note that this is amending ordinance 2401.
Thank
So this is an existing ordinance about the whole site that's being amended.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Thank you very much. Applicant?
Tom Torgerson, 301 Palermo Circle. I don't know what I should add, Jason.
Were you sworn in,
There-
sir?
Yes,
Excuse
I
me.
was.
Okay, thank you.
There's a lot of technical stuff there. I just kind of looked at this is some kind of post-construction cleanup. With these two signs, one, the one on Estero and Crescent, we got a development order with Lee County DOT to widen Estero Boulevard, extend the left turn on Crescent from the corner, or extend it down to the corner when you come off of the bridge to have a longer left-hand turn lane, and also to widen the sidewalk on the bay side there. And I guess Rob Phelan was really the one that managed the oversight of our construction of Estero Boulevard and the sidewalk there. And the signs were in the master concept plan as approved originally. And Rob Phelan one day just said, this sign needs to move, and that's what triggered the Crescent and Estero Boulevard sign request. Now, the other sign request over at the Beach Club side, the seaward side of Estero Boulevard, was Tico gas related. We were going to put it exactly where it was shown on the master concept plan that was approved by the town. But I think it needed to move maybe 6 inches, Jason, or something like that to be out of the way of a Tico gas line, because they had to relocate their gas lines because right-of-way changed in that area there. And they had to bore under Estero Boulevard, and in the process of doing it, the process of boring, you have to overshoot your mark, and they couldn't accomplish the boring without the sign moving. So that was at the request of Tico Gas. So when we went to get our certificate of occupancy, town inspections noted that signs were not exactly in the places that they were approved to be on the master concept plan. And so from a layperson's perspective, that's the reason why we're here today. Lee Dot moved one sign, or told us to move a sign, and Tico told us to move the other sign. The reference, Jason, to other signs and lighting, to my knowledge, we have no issues outstanding with the town of Fort Myers Beach with our certificate of occupancy. We do not have a permanent certificate of occupancy yet, by the way. We're still operating under a temporary, and the only issues outstanding are, as you referenced, Jason, with FWC and DEP. It's all turtle lighting related 100%, and FWC DEP did an inspection of the property in preparation for our final CO, and they did that, I think it was in April or May. They spent 2 days and nights on the property, and
Sure they
most of their
What a
work was
shame.
done at nighttime. And we received 2 months later an 87-page report. Now, granted, in our process, because we're forward of the Triple CL line, a good portion of our development is, that we had to obtain, I forget what it's called, but we had to get stamp plans approved by FWC and DEP. We had to hire, a third-party consultant, turtle lighting person to work with FWC, and we did that for a year, and we finally got stamp plans. We built the property in regards to turtle lighting in accordance with the stamp plans, but then when they do their inspection, they hold the right to reevaluate after you build according to their stamp plans.
Oh my gosh.
And the 87-page report is related to that, the findings that they came up with, and we just finally got our response back to them, because you can't piecemeal response to them. They required it to be all-encompassing of all 87 pages. And with our acts of, what we're recommending for correction, with all the specifications, everything has to be designed, and then they'll review it all together comprehensively at once. And so they've had that now for a period of time, and we have no idea when we'll get that back, but that's what's outstanding with our certificate of occupancy that Jason's referencing. Otherwise, we're clear with fire, we're clear with the town of Fort Myers Beach. We're totally, the only thing we're outstanding with is turtle lighting.
Okay.
And I will add a little narrative. I think we're being made an example of how strict the state DEP is going to be on Fort Myers Beach with turtle lighting. It's egregious. It's really egregious. It's unbelievable. And they have the power of God. There's no way to challenge them. We've actually hired our third consultant to help work and negotiate with DEP and FWC to get through this process and get our final sign-off for our certificate of occupancy. I'm telling you, it's an amazing process. It's probably going to cost us another $500,000 by the time we're done.
It's ridiculous.
Some of the things that have been required. And, they had our plans, and everything is shown on our plans, and they didn't review they're basically not holding themselves accountable for effective review of our plans and just saying, well, I'm sorry, but this is the way it is. So I didn't intend to vent like that up here today, but it's really a painful process, let me tell you. And we will be the standard for turtle lighting on Fort Myers Beach in every regard, both sides of Estero Boulevard. We've got TVs bagged. They're up on the second floor of the Bayside property because we can't operate those this time of year. And they're not, you can't even see them from the beach. Just to give a couple of examples.
That's crazy.
It's pretty bizarre.
Okay, do we have any questions for the applicant, for Mr. Torgerson?
Do you concur or object to staff's recommendation to add the lighting element to the ordinance today?
I have no concern about it. We're going to satisfy FWC and DEP.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Any further questions for the staff? Is there any public comment? No. Close public comment. Nancy, I'll ask you a question. Would you like a comprehensive motion, or would you like a motion on each deviation?
I believe the comprehensive motion would be sufficient.
Thank you.
It is the approval or recommendation for the ordinance as drafted that contains the various deviations.
Thank you very much.
We do have an amended ordinance.
We do.
Yes, we do.
So.
Yes. Thanks for reminding me.
24.xx.
So maybe Jason wants to just say what you have
Yes,
received.
what is the amendment, or what are the amendments here?
I apologize for not getting into that
No,
earlier.
No problem. I'm glad Jim brought it up.
So what you have before you, for anybody watching or listening at home, is a revised version of the ordinance that is being proposed to town council. The changes between what was online and what the LPA members have in front of them is that the version that was put online included the conditions of approval as opposed to the deviations. It also includes the most recent amended master concept plan for the CPD. And that references Exhibit A, which is the full list of deviations, the existing ones that were in 2401, and then the new deviations that are being proposed under this process. The text in the ordinance itself is minor editing changes. There's no substantive changes in there other than the addition of the deviation list.
So Exhibit A is the big deal.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Okay.
where all of their requests are located.
Thank you, Jason. If there's no further discussion, would someone like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll certainly move. What's the ordinance number we should be using this, Counselor?
2401, is it not?
No.
No, it had not been assigned at the time
Okay.
of distribution.
Give me a moment. My computer went back to sleep. It's going to be 2420.
Make a motion to approve ordinance number 2420.
Second.
As being
As
consistent
being- as
with
being
the
consistent
comp
with the
plan.
comprehensive plan.
Yes.
With the addition of the lighting.
Exactly.
Okay, so there is a motion to approve ordinance 2420.
Second.
It's already been
Okay.
seconded, with the addition of remedying any outstanding issues with lighting with FWC and DEP on the property. There's a motion, there's a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for your vote. Jim?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Jane?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
And I vote aye, it passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, staff. Thank you to the applicant. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, the next, we're now in the administrative agenda, so any administrative issues need to be raised? None?
No.
Next item is LPA members' items and reports. Jim?
Yeah, I have one, and I don't know if this is the beginning of a longer discussion or just a point of view and perspective, but I want to talk a little bit about the conversation that's going on in the atmosphere around the Jello topic of public benefit. It's a incredibly important component, clearly by the conversations that are being happened on the island and certainly with the official bodies on what the definition is of public benefit, how broadly it is interpreted, and most importantly, by whom. I guess the perspective I would personally offer as an LPM member and how I feel about this personally is that the representation and the description and the compelling argument for what a public benefit is as seen by the individuals offering it, they have the case, they have the responsibility to make that case to our community that here's why we're doing what we're doing. We're doing it in addition to the things that are required. And as a result of that, it will look like this as a public benefit as an entire package. Clearly, whether it's official, legal, or just practice, the trade-offs on these public benefits with some of the variances and deviations that are being asked for are completely being commingled. And that may be perfectly fine, but then it says, how do you raise the importance of the technical application that they're violating or not, and the more personal opinion application of what a public benefit is. And I would suggest that, and this came to my mind, obviously, with the ones we're going to be looking at going forward here, as I'm reading the staff reports, they're including an opinion on the value of that public benefit, or is it itself a public benefit or not. I don't think that's a charged responsibility the staff should be put in that situation to determine, because I think that the applicants have, as I indicated before, the role and responsibility to tell us what the public benefit is and how it impacts. And then we, through our responsibilities as LPA members and ultimately council, should adjudicate the measure of how impactful that is, how big it is, and I think more importantly, the relevancy of it, because it will change in many ways. Some of those changes will be the geographies we're talking about. A restaurant on the south end of this island is a compelling public benefit right now, compared to the north side. And therefore, those of us that would sit and say, I'd really like to see these items included as an offering from a developer, that would be important for me individually here, being to live down there. I also accumulated over the last few years, watching particularly Vice Mayor Adderholt champion the cause for some of these developments allowing space for barbers and dentists and spas and whatever they happen to be. Under the auspices, I believe, he was representing it as a form of public benefit, because we need those disciplines and those professional capabilities on the island. So I just wanted to start a conversation, because I think this is going to have some definition around it in one way, shape, or form, that I'm not sure staff can apply what we could apply to the recommendations of whether or not something is or isn't a public benefit, and I'm not sure it belongs in a report. And the last thing I'll say, and then close this up, part of that is because these writings for the individuals that don't get to spend the kind of time that we spend with these processes, they take those for the words they are. So they gain a life and a momentum and an influence all of their own just because they're in a staff report. Yep. And I think that's hard to undo. The conversations I have now casually are, well, you saw in the staff report that isn't a public benefit. So I want to raise that as a topic. I don't know where our authority begins and ends to influence the outcome, but I think it matters to me that we start to have this conversation.
So if I could just chime in on that, it was interesting because Jim asked me before the meeting started, is there an opportunity for me to raise this issue? And I showed him my notes and I said, look, I've got it on my items. Because last night I was talking with Jim Adderholt also. And Jim and I don't, I love him dearly, but we don't necessarily agree on some things. And yet last night, all of a sudden I had this, thought that maybe public benefit, if we are to describe it or define it, maybe it's somehow attached to the different future land use categories that we have on the island. Because as this Jim just said, what might be important for the south end of the island, beach access, a restaurant, some sort of services, are not necessarily the same as what they would be to somebody who's developing in Times Square, where parking would be a definite, public benefit, or again, beach access or something like that. And so I thought, well, could we begin to at least define what the public sees as a benefit, and define, Jim was saying, well, do we really need to define it? And I think because there's so much talk about it, it would at least warrant a conversation at a minimum. And I happen to agree with staff. Is a restaurant a public benefit? No. However, I understand Jim's point of view, and now yours, that at the south end of the island, perhaps it is. Even though, would it have been 5 years ago? Maybe not, because there were restaurants there. Mm-hmm. So it's the changing dynamic and nature of the community that's also generating that conversation. Anyhow, I think it's an important conversation for us to have. I think it's an important conversation for the town council to have, because otherwise it just lies flat with what do you think and what do I think? And if it comes down to zoning, a zoning decision, will we or won't we permit this based on some public benefit, there should be something concrete or not just a desire of a particular group that we want this, and so we're making a public benefit, or we like it. I think it needs to be something more. I agree with Jim, and at a minimum, it needs to be a conversation we have, and maybe something comes out of it. So my thought last night, what I told the other Jim I was going to do today, was say, hey, instead of getting into this now, how about each of us come to the table? Let's plan on talking about it at a meeting, and each of us come to the table with what we think is public benefit. You have an enormous amount of experience. Maybe something leads us to that description or that definition. For whatever reason, last night, I thought maybe it's attached to those categories for, just to make it, somewhat formal or descriptive in nature. Anyhow, I agree. It needs to be discussed, and I think that there really should be some sort of criteria attached to it.
I think I'd like to add. I think it's a very good point. But I think you could establish criteria that would generally define a public benefit. You would have to meet this checkbox and this checkbox, you know, something like that, like,
Is there
provide a service that's not locally available, or provide, you know, public access, like to a beach or something. But you could, I think you could think it through and come up with a pretty good
At least the big
guideline.
categories.
Yeah.
Exactly, at least come up with some categories. Yeah.
Is there a list already on some community books that have come up with
We've
creative?
had this meeting several times.
We're gonna have it again too,
Okay,
Sarah.
so,
Just
and
FYI.
we spoke about it, so we spoke about it during the comprehensive plan.
I remember.
Did not get consensus and
No.
nobody wanted it, so we dropped it. I brought it back at the last M&P and said, talk about public benefits at a public meeting. So I want to do this as part of the land development code update and come up with criteria that the community supports. So we're gonna be
Absolutely.
doing 2 meetings and 1 online meeting, or online versions of the same meeting. And surveys are gonna be available for residents who aren't here, so that they can, you know, give input, and we can take it all in, and we'll
Wonderful.
bring it back. So, I mean,
And
the
when is
intent
this
is,
gonna
Yeah,
happen?
when?
we have to get the comprehensive plan adopted, and then the
Oh.
next step is I get to move on
You
to
may
the
have
land
already-
development code. So that is the goal.
A year from now, or?
Does it do any harm?
It was supposed to be adopted earlier this week. We're
Yeah.
gonna have it coming back,
September
in
9th.
2 weeks. So,
Because we really need this now.
Well, the developments that are coming are hanging a lot of the influence on these. And I think those of us that sit in these roles and represent the entire community are the ones that ought to adjudicate the impact it has. And I mean this in the most respectful way. As soon as it's on a piece of paper, through another report or something, it's now 2 conversations versus the one we would have dynamically or extemporaneously with the client while they're here, or with the developer, or with the applicant. So maybe it's a little bit of process mixing versus category creating, but the process does matter, both integrity and repeatability.
if the preference would be that staff not touch public benefit, we don't have to. We don't love long staff reports. If you don't want them, we don't do them.
Okay,
Take on this.
I'll add 2 comments.
Good.
First, an amenity is not necessarily a
That's what I
public
called it
benefit.
last night, was an amenity. Did you hear that, Adderholt? Amenity.
And second, in my mind, a public benefit is in perpetuity. A beach access, a view, that's going to be there forever. But a restaurant, it could go out of business. Matter of fact, 75–80% of them go out of business in the first 3 years. So to give a credit for something that isn't going to always be there, but the zoning is forever, doesn't seem like a fair trade-off to me, to the town.
What do you think about that?
If you're incorporating the operation of a restaurant as part of a dynamic experience you're offering for an entire development, it's much less likely to go out of business, and therefore diminish the attractability, competitively or otherwise, to that resort.
That's the
So I
biggest
think
one.
that's more sustainable than a standalone. Completely agree with you. If somebody came in and just wanted to start a restaurant, and were asking for a bunch of variances and said, this is a public benefit, I'm right down the line with you, Jim. But I think comprehensively as part of something, it's gonna be really hard to pull that out of the overall picture.
Well, there's a big difference between a white tablecloth restaurant and
Sure.
a fast food restaurant, and they would both qualify as a restaurant.
Well said.
Right.
I love the white
Miley.
tablecloths. John, you have any comment? You don't have to. but-
No, I have thoughts about this, right? I tend to be on the side of a commercial enterprise is not generally a public benefit. It's a private enterprise. Personally, I do, though, subscribe to the fact that public access to, as an example, a restaurant in a resort is a benefit to the neighbors that are around there. So I struggle with this when we have looked at previous things that have come in where, you know, public access can be a very large portion versus something that is walled off. Right? So even though it is a commercial enterprise, if the public has access, there's a benefit to that, you know? Those are my thoughts.
So if we were to use Margaritaville as an example, which we always tend to bring it up,
Yep.
that entire property, and even during the course of the hearings, the applicant, they said, this is a public place. You wanna come and just sit down, you can go and just sit down. Now, of course, the pool is its own separate gig, but it is public.
You can buy a pass.
You can buy a pass
Yep.
and go in as a member of the public. So it's public. But that hasn't been discussed in any of the other things that we've heard. We've heard you can go to the restaurant. You can't, so I think that public element in perpetuity is a good statement to use, is extremely important,
Right.
Because otherwise, okay, so can you all think about this some more, and let's actually put it on an agenda and talk about it, and maybe if it's on an agenda, we'll have some public that will come in.
That'd be
Maybe
nice.
some public would do us the favor of sending us emails, which you can just send directly to Amy Baker at amy@fnbgov.com, and she'll forward them to us. It's the easiest way to send to the town council or to the LPA. And let's talk about this, because I think it's extremely important. Otherwise, ultimately, public interest, the public interest of Jim Adderholt, who's made his thoughts very clear, and I understand why he's saying what he's saying, but his idea of public interest and Karen hasn't really opined on that. What are they? I mean, you end up with 5 different people whose idea of that benefit could be totally different, and then where do you end up?
And I would only add that I also believe the topic is dynamic, that when a need is met, there's another one, either additional or
Well, that's
contingent,
interesting, too.
that needs to be considered, whether it connects to that supplied need by someone else or otherwise. And we all learned 2 years ago that there's changes that happen on such a scale that these needs need to change. And I love the fact that we have some folks come in and talk about it, the public in particular. And I'll bet we get a collage of recommendations that we could categorize without overly defining, and therefore having people ask for something just for this versus making it better than it could have been asked for, more all-inclusive and more comprehensive with the other needs of the town. So I think keeping it as a dynamic concept would be important too.
And ultimately, with the idea of helping the community, helping the folks who are developing properties,
Exactly.
helping the town council make their ultimate decisions, that would be the goal. So, public, chime in. Okay, anything else, Jim?
No, thank you.
How about you, Don? Any LPA item?
No, no, yeah.
Doug?
Thanks.
I have, I guess it's like a plug maybe. It's I'm on the church council for St. Peter Lutheran Church. And we're rebuilding, we're like probably, I think we're the only church on the island that's actually was able to meet the 50% rule. And in the process of doing it, we've got the same kind of philosophy we've talked about here of just doing things better. And one thing that occurred to us is we had a huge lawn that was pretty unattractive, and it's right there on Estero Boulevard by St. Pierre Drive. And so we've got a goal to landscape all that grass with native plants and so forth. And I just want to put out a plug that anybody that wants to help us think that through or support us on that, we'd appreciate it.
You know who loves that is Rhonda Beach. Do you know her?
Yeah, oh yeah, I know
Yeah,
Randa.
yeah, she is,
So,
she's,
anyway.
and who is, Miss Patton that lives in Bay Beach? She is also a big, well, you've talked to the garden club, I'm guessing.
Yeah, we've
Okay.
got that in mind too. So anyway,
Good,
it's
good.
a goal to add to the public benefit in the sense of beautifying our
That's a,
property.
that's a public benefit, absolutely. Jane, anything?
Yes, I'm having a little bit of a problem with the idea that, packages are being presented as, at the same time, more parcels are being added. And if they're going to be called the same thing, so like, for example, if Margaritaville were not Margaritaville here and they had the Bayside property and the Gulffront property, and they only were gonna bring in their package on the Bayside property and not the Gulffront property, and they're still gonna be called Margaritaville, I think the whole package has to be presented. Whether it's going to be done in stages or whatever, but to have something and say, oh, well, we have this property over here and we don't know what we're gonna do with it, I'm sorry, but I don't believe you bought it with the idea of I don't have a clue. And I think it's important for us to be able to look at the entire package as opposed to piecemeal and then have some other large thing come in and just have to look at it separately. So I think if it's gonna be called the same thing, I think we should have the whole package presented at the same time. I'm just wondering how
You
other
mean if
people
it's gonna
feel.
be called the same thing, or if it's the same developer?
No, if it's called the same thing, I think it needs to
Okay.
be, I mean, if it could be a totally different project next door, and that would be called something else. But if this is, then it would be looked at separately. But if you're adding acreage to a parcel, I think we need to know what the parcel is gonna be under the same name.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on that? I mean, are you okay with the mystery lot next door?
Are you talking about something in
Charlie.
particular?
No,
Yeah, you talk about
no, I think there's several properties.
There are several properties.
Yeah, there are several properties, and I'm having a problem with not knowing. I think that it's, kind of scary not to have, if it's part of the same project, I think the whole project, and it can be phased out, because I ask people when they're gonna build and they all have different answers. But I think that you have to have the whole project to determine the project.
I guess my initial reaction would be going along the lines that Anita drug us back in when we were looking at the Pearl Street property. We started to build a house there and get into a lot of recommendations about how we would do if it was us. The developers typically have those parcels separated off by LLCs for exactly the reason we're talking about. They don't, in my mind, have an idea, neither do we, how the island's gonna develop, at what speed, and what's gonna be around, and what's gonna be needed and necessary. So I think if you're suggesting that whatever they're putting under that LLC should be seen in its entirety, fair request and something that they ought to be able to provide, I think you'll find quickly these parcels are independent in the way that they buy them, protect them from liability, and develop them. So I don't think it will get a lot of traction, but there's no harm in saying if it's gonna be under one name and structure, then we ought to be able to see what you're planning.
All right.
I think, I'm just thinking of a case that might have been here, but isn't, that people have concerns. I don't think that you can ask that developer, say, okay, we've got your CPD here, but what we really wanna know is what you're gonna do over here. I don't think you can use that to judge this, because this is what's in front of you, and it is like the lady's house, like Penny's house.
Yep.
So would it be ideal for somebody to paint you the big picture? Absolutely. I mean, there's another parcel where I'd like to know what the big picture is. But if they don't tell us, we have to judge what's in front of us. Doug, do you have any, comment on that?
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you, Anita. I think, I understand what you're both saying, Jane, but, and I understand what Jim's saying, but I think we have to take our projects at face value, like Anita said. Hey, this is what's in front of us. And, if you want to enhance your story by telling us what you're going to do with the other piece of property, that might be in your interest to do that.
Sure.
But
Well-
we can't make you do that.
That's kind of what I'm, if Margaritaville would have presented as just the Bayside property, I don't think it would have gotten as far without the component of the public benefit for having it be open to the public and having it be a view corridor and
But
have
their
it.
whole CPD was all of it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
yeah.
I would like to see a whole CPD,
Yeah.
but you're saying we can't request that, okay?
Right.
Well, because it either is or it isn't.
And they can change their mind the minute they walk out of the room.
Bingo.
Yeah,
You
okay.
guys have anything to order? To order?
As
Would you like
you-
to order anything?
I'm getting hungry.
Lunch in a
As
minute
you
here.
eloquently stated during the meeting, we can only deal with what's
What's the one in front of us?
petitioned
Yeah.
before.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, how about you,
No,
sir?
I have
Anything?
nothing else.
John?
I'm glad with the discussion we've had, and I welcome as much community input as we can get.
Great.
Great.
And I asked Dawn. Okay, so Nancy, do you have anything?
Nothing. I think you had a good meeting today.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Sarah? Judith? Anything?
Can you give us a preview of what's coming up?
That's
Yeah.
that's right
Meeting?
there on
Next
the
items.
agenda.
The third.
There's silence there.
Yeah.
Is that because it's scary?
September 3rd, right?
September 3rd, correct.
Yes, September 3rd.
You sent me the whole list, I'm good to go.
And then September 10th again.
I'd like to ask another procedural question. If London Bay has requested to be rescheduled, are they out of line now? So like, or do they get to sort of hold their place? By that I mean, you know, I know there are other people who are waiting to come forward or who want to come forward. How does that work? Or that's
a
an
staff
internal mechanism. You don't need to tell us. I like mystery.
It was not continued to a time certain, so.
No,
right,
In
it's
essence,
just
they
re-
have not saved the spot.
Okay, thank you, Judith.
We'll have to, they'll, presumably they continued because they're going to do some work on their application. And then we'll have to review that, so
Okay,
that will take the necessary time
thank
to
you,
do that.
thank you very much.
So your next hearing is September 3rd, and then the one after that is September 10th.
Right?
Do you have October's, because I got some travel there, I just wanna confirm,
October is,
the 12th or something, I think.
It's the 10th, I think. November's the 12th.
October should be October 8th.
Ah.
Right, sorry.
Does that appear to be
And
correct?
it is, yes.
I won't be here, I'm
Right.
sorry, I booked it wrong.
Okay, October 8th and then November 12th, what Dawn said.
Correct.
How did I do that?
Well, it's still out there, it could be changed. So go ahead, Sarah, what's on for the 3rd?
So for September 3rd, what we have, what we believe we will be having is CPD to CPD rezoning for the fire station, a variance for a house at 319 Estero Boulevard, vacation of an easement for the Fort Myers Beat Art Association, potentially a special exception, yes, that one should be on, a special exception for Lonnie Kai's consumption on premises outdoor seating area. Potentially, oh, no, yeah, this one is in Estero Island Beach Club, CPD, and then updates to the CB zoning district.
Okay,
Oh, we're also moving the privateer special exception to
We're
that
gonna spend the night?
We've got a lot going on.
The 10th, right?
Okay,
That's the
That's the
third.
third.
Yeah, that's the 3rd. So
and
then-
what about the
And then
10th?
the 10th, we tentatively have, that's an admin amendment, tentatively have the Red Coconut Development Agreement,
CK?
Salty Crab.
The salty crab?
No, Salty Crab's
No.
not gonna be going.
Okay,
Okay.
Neptune,
Neptune on the 10th?
yep.
Neptune
Ar-
and Red Coconut? Boy,
You just wait, Arches,
also on the 10th? No.
So, I mean, so that's the CPA and the CPD. I mean, here's the problem, everybody's submitted around the same time and they all wanna get in
Before the election?
Yes.
Yes, I understand.
And so we were also going to have in the not very distant future, Pink Shell also. It doesn't appear, I don't know timing of Outrigger, so we're just gonna leave that one alone, but we're gonna have Pink Shell, Arches, Neptune, and Red Coconut.
All
So-
on the 10th?
Not on the 10th, but very soon, if there's a way or an interest in having an additional meeting in September, that would give us 3 LPA hearings, and I'm not sure timing wise, how staff will accommodate that, or if we can even accommodate that.
I mean, the
This,
old,
this goes
But-
to your father's advice, Anita.
oh, exactly.
So how long
Do
can
you
you
wanna
sit?
know what my father's advice was? I'm gonna just tell you this. Your brain can only assimilate what your boom can tolerate. So. And say that with a good Spanish
That's
accent.
why I wanted to get that on the record, Madam Chair.
It is, I mean, you know what, quite honestly, for the applicant
Right.
to think about, oh, I'm gonna be in front. Jane, do you remember when you did your pool thing when you lived in Madison?
Yeah.
Jane came in with a pool, this is very beginning of the town, and she went on and it was simple. Obviously, the council was gonna give it, and she kept going on and on and on. And I finally said, Jane, stop. You know, you're on overkill. But
Less is
for an
more.
applicant to think that, oh, I'm gonna come before the LPA or the town council in hour 8.
Yeah, we're gonna be
Or
right
e-
there.
even context with the type of request. If you've got something simple and somebody's listening to a several hour professional developer presentation and just trying to feel relevant and have that thing heard in the right manner, it's we had to bust them up, I think.
We'll let a second in October.
Well, they wanna get to the council. That's
Yes,
the
Yeah,
issue.
exactly.
If they wanna get to the
Yeah.
vote.
Well, I feel sorry for the town council. I mean, so let's say that we hear all those on the 10th. So then they go to the council, what, on the 16th? Oh, no, they can't go on the
No.
16th because they can't make the thing. They
October.
go to the council on the 7th of October.
Yeah.
Or the 21st of October.
There you are.
And then there's also a meeting on the 4th of November if they wanna, you know, and we've let people know that that could be an option, but I mean, the hard part really is they have to have the 2 town council meetings, and
That's right, they have to have 2 town council meetings, but not for Seagate.
I'm in favor of additional meeting, Madam Chair,
I
if we
believe
can make that work.
Seagate does have to have,
Two town council hearings?
Yes.
For the development order?
yes.
Okay.
The code says it is
How did I do
tantamount
that?
to a, CPD,
Okay.
a rezoning.
So, if
Oh, it's
there's going to
November.
be, is there going to be a second meeting in October or a third meeting in September?
November 4th is not the right date.
But let's talk about September and October. So,
Will the group, I'll follow either one.
For
Dawn, how about you?
I will not be available the 10th already.
Okay,
I will be catching a flight on the 3rd, so I will be remote, but not be available for very many hours. And then the week of the 16th, I'm also traveling, so I would just say you won't have me on the 10th or that following week.
or
if that's
September, basically, okay. And what
okay.
does
I mean,
it
if
look
you went
like
out
for
to the
staff?
20-something, you'd be okay.
Okay. What does this look like for staff?
This is what I'm asking about the noticing, because we need to make sure that it's far enough in advance of the meeting that we can get all the noticing.
And we could notice prior to the LPA hearing, I mean, that's an option. The problem is if there are changes at the LPA hearing to the title, I mean, the title is all that has to be advertised. So as long as we get the title right, that may be fine. But if there are changes to the conditions, things like that, that won't show up necessarily in the agenda if the time's too short, because the agenda will be closed for the town council meeting by the time you have the LPA hearing. So, timing wise, it might be tricky to make sure that all the information you've provided regarding it actually gets to the town council, in their agenda packet.
So,
Can I just say something on behalf of staff? So basically, if we have a long meeting like today, okay.
Today's
imagine
nothing.
if we had.
I know.
Not so long at all.
But what I guess my point is that even though there's a week where perhaps there isn't a meeting, staff is working very hard to get the agenda ready for the meeting the following week.
And we
then-
recognize that.
Yeah, and so I want to just apologize or make a comment. I mean, this last agenda, we really worked hard on it, and we apologize for getting it to you late, but we were really scrambling because we had town council, like right before, so
perhaps there needs to be a different level of expectations from the applicants. I mean, okay, I know you want to get in right now, but if you can't do it, I
And
mean,
if we can't read it,
quite honestly, to receive a packet of 400+ pages 3 days before a hearing was brutal. I mean, I jumped up and cheered, but we didn't have to, go through London Bay. And not that I was sorry for them, I mean, not that it was, yay, I don't have to listen to them, but it was just the sheer workload. Okay, so what's the decision here? We have 2 meetings right now in September, the 3rd and the 10th, and you're telling us the 10th, it would be Arches, Seagate, Neptune, plus.
I think that's too much, I really do.
That's why we gotta split a meeting, that's why we
I
need a
agree.
meeting.
We gotta split it
So,
up.
We gotta
can
give it
we
to-
see if that's possible to, it doesn't necessarily have to be on a Tuesday, what if we went to the first week of October? Or, you know what, how about this, how about you all talk to the applicants and look at your schedules in town hall and whatever else, and then send out an email to us to say, hey, what day works?
But we're willing to have an additional meeting is the point, I believe is what I'm hearing.
Yes.
To make sure we
Because
cadence these and give them full due
Seagate,
diligence.
Neptune, and Arches all at once it makes me crazy thinking about it. I don't even know, I mean, I have an idea about Seagate, I don't know what the Arches is now, and I don't know what Neptune is. So,
That'd be good, I like your suggestion.
okay? So, you all let us know.
And the development agreement for Red Coconut will be the first time that we've done a
Exactly,
development.
exactly, yeah. Okay, anything else from anyone? If not, may I have a motion to
So
adjourn?
moved.
Thank you. We're adjourned at 11:54 a.m. for our
Yay.
short meeting.
yay.
PM.